Welcome to the quote midweek unquote mailbag and here on your Pride of Detroit podcast feed, where we answer your Detroit Lions questions just about every week. My name is Jeremy Reisman, back from sunny Florida, here to not skip a beat here. We wanted to make sure, even though it is later in the week, we wanted to still get this one out because we know you guys have been waiting for a little bit on a midweek mailbag podcast. So here we are doing it. You can find me in Detroit Online. Who cares? With me, as always, this month in particular, the general manager of Pride of Detroit. You can find him at Erik Schlitt on Twitter. It's Erik Schlick. Hey, buddy. How's it going?
Hey, buddy. Hey, I think if we didn't title this the midweek mailbag and titled it, I don't know, something different, we probably wouldn't have to have so many disclaimers.
That's a good point. As soon as a good alternative title comes along, maybe we'll change it. But
I have one.
I'll
tell you off air.
Until that day comes, you know what? I think we're fine. All right, let's get into the show here. I think the show, based on the questions we got, I'm kind of splitting it into two. The first half here is a lot of questions about this past week when it comes to the owners meeting, some rule changes, some things that Brad and Dan said and Rod said, and then the last half here is going to be a little bit more draft focused because we are at this point less than 3 weeks away from the start of the NFL draft, which is pretty wild to think about because it feels like it has really snuck up on us at this point, which I'm all for. Shorter off seasons until we get to the draft, I'm all about. But let's get into it. The next three questions are all about the offensive line because that was kind of one of the more interesting topics that were talked about at the NFL owners meetings. First question comes from that Johnny Moe on Twitter. Says, when discussing the O-line, Dan Campbell mentioned several options, including Giovanni Manu being in the mix at guard, yet there was no mention of Sorsdal. Do you think that means Colby is now being considered solely at safety at tackle, or that he has fallen out of favor and may not make the cut?
I don't know. I try not to read too much into any media sessions where a coach starts naming names because inevitably he leaves somebody out.
True. Yep.
And so I it's fascinating that Manu has, they're at least mentioning him in the same sentence, or, as in the same sentence, or mentioning him as a potential guard.
Yeah.
I think it's really crossover. If I had to speculate why Colby wasn't mentioned, it's because he's maybe already been doing the crossover for 2 years now.
Right.
And so, or it could just be doesn't have time to name all players listed on the roster at that position. Right. So, we'll see. If you're talking change up and you're talking switch up, anytime you're not a starter, you're going to be cross-trained. And a lot of times it means for tackles, you're getting reps at tackle and guard. And if you're a guard, you're getting reps at both sides and ideally some center reps as well, which a lot of the reserve guys get. They get those opportunities at center. So I don't put a ton of stock into someone not being mentioned.
Yeah, I think I get the inclination to do that. Like if he's not a name that immediately comes to head, maybe that means you're in the doghouse a little bit, or
sure.
if you're not being thought of Dan Campbell right away, I can understand why some people want to interpret that as, oh, he must not be in the mix. But it is off the dome here. We forget people's names all the time, right?
Sure.
So you don't want to read too much into it, but I also kind of think the two presumptions there are kind of where things are trending, right? Like it does to me feel like Colby might be going back to tackle based on some of the things they did with him last year. It does feel like he is going to have an uphill climb to make the 53-man roster this year, considering the way last year ended with him being, a game day inactive pretty regularly. He doesn't have the versatility that Michael Neese had to play center. He does have tackle guard versatility, but they have, that is the jump that I think you're expecting Giovanni Manu to make this year, at least being like the primary reserve tackle if that job doesn't go to Skipper, right? And so to me, it's getting harder and harder to find a spot for someone like Colby Sorsel, unless he can prove his versatility between tackle and guard. And that's still something that we haven't, they've obviously tried, but we haven't quite seen the fruits of that labor yet.
The hardest part about projecting offensive line right now is that they are not done adding.
Yep.
And so until we have a complete roster of what they are going to have competition, it'd be, who they're going to bring in, might bring in a vet, might bring in a rookie, might bring in both. When we finally get that total look at what the offensive line is, I think we'll get a better understanding of where the hierarchy lands.
Yep. Let's stay here with John. John asks, Dan's comments from the owners' meetings on Graham Glasgow make you think his role will be more backup to both guard and center than starter? Who do you predict are the two starting offensive guards week 1, and is one not currently on the roster? So the surprising thing to me when Graham was brought up, which was, I think the first question was, do you still trust Graham? Because I think Graham has lost a lot of trust amongst fans, right? I think a lot of people assume that the line should upgrade that position. And I think the person who asked Dan that was like, hey, are you kind of aligned with that line of thinking? And then the follow-up question was, are you thinking about moving him back to right guard? And when he was asked, do you have a lot of faith in Graham? A lot of what Dan said was, he's our reserve center. Like, that's so important to us. He's very good at the center, probably better than a lot of starters in this league, and just kept railing home how good of a backup center he was. And so again, this is another thing where I can see why people are reading into this a little bit and saying, okay, but he was your starting guard last year. Why are you praising so much about his ability to play center?
It's tough to put too much stock into, he might have heard the question or thought of an answer differently. I do think being a backup center is incredibly valuable for them.
Yeah.
Right. Center, it in the Lions' mind, center is equally as important as the tackle spots, right? That's where they've invested their money. That's where they have their Pro Bowlers and they're all pros. The tackle and center, those are the key spots for them on the offensive line. And the guards, they feel like they can kind of plug and play them in. So again,
you don't want to make any assumptions before we see the full picture.
Yeah, I really don't. But I get the trepidation with Graham because he's getting older and he did kind of take a step back. I know a lot of people have suggested moving him to right guard will solve the problems, and I don't know if it will. He doesn't stylistically play right guard the way that they like to deploy their right guard. They like a more physical bully at right guard, more of what you saw from Zeitler last year, more of what you see in Mahogany. And so I think Graham is a very valuable piece, and he could easily be the starter in week 1. At the same time, I expect him to be challenged by someone who's not on the roster right now. Yeah. And I don't know if he'll hold the job for week 1. It's hard to say. Right. Because I don't know who's on the roster. I don't know who they're acquiring. And to answer the second part of John's question, I would say Graham and Mahogany are your starters. Until they add somebody that I can say is a true competitor, that's who I'm going with. Yeah. Could they, if they draft a guard in the first round, that's going to be bad news for Graham. Maybe even second round is going to be good competition. Even third round, good competition, I think, from the guard class. You add one, there's 2 veterans out there that I think could challenge him. But even then, I don't know if they would, because they're also getting up in age. So it's hard to really say with any certainty where they're going. But if you hold my feet to the fire, I think Graham's right now in the position to start.
I'm not going to take Dan Campbell's comments about Graham as a slight to him as a guard, because if you then go back to the comments that Brad Holmes made about Christian Mahogany, which was, hey, he's not a starter yet. We're the sample size is 2 starts. We're not ready to crown this guy. We need to bring in competition. We think he's starting capable at some point, but we're not ready to crown anyone yet. And I think that's just kind of the mentality these coaches and general managers have about the guard position right now, which is we don't know who's going to start. We legitimately don't know who's going to start. We want to make sure there's competition so that the best guy, the person who earns it in August, is the one who's starting when it comes to September. And I know for a lot of coaches, a lot of general managers, a lot of franchises, that is lip service, right? Oh, we don't know who's going to start. And you draft a guy in the first round and he's the guy that starts. The Lions are a team that have shown that they are that. If you are a 6th round Malcolm Rodriguez, but you're balling out in training camp, you're going to start. And so I don't think anyone has this job handed to them at this point. You can say these guys are the favorites, but I don't think the Lions are going into the draft right now thinking these are the guys we know are going to start. Even if they go and get a free agent, even if they go and draft a guy on day 1 or day 2, those guys aren't going to walk into the building and have a starting job. Everyone is going to have to earn it. And I think Mahogany is going to have to, like, I'm no longer working under the assumption that Mahogany will be a starting guard week 1 because he's going to need to earn it. He's going to need to play well in training camp. Is he the favorite right now? I mean, probably to take one of those spots, but I don't think it's a guarantee by any means.
Yeah, when he just had both his starts, he was terrific.
Yeah.
Right? And he left a very big impression. And then you add in the mentality that the coaching staff has of him and his mentality and his just no nonsense, dirty work, bruiser, New Jersey. What was the phrase? The New Jersey. What did Brad call him?
Dirtbag.
Dirtbag. I mean, that it just all ties in, and then he goes out and has 2 sensational games, and you can see the upside. So I that for me matches what I saw on tape from him. So I feel pretty confident that he's going to win a job, even if they bring somebody in. I still think he's gonna be one of the 2 best guards. But again, I don't know for certain. That's my gut feeling.
The other kind of player in this formula of finding an offensive line is Giovanni Manu. A lot of attention has been brought to the comments that Dan kind of brought up unpromptedly when talking about moving Graham to left to right. He mentioned, what about Giovanni Manu? Maybe he's in there. Maybe we try him at guard. And so the question here from Ash says, what are your opinions on the Manu mention in the guard competition? Could his skill set fit there? And or would it be dooming to a Sorsdal like pit of obscurity as he tries to learn a second position while also dealing with a step up in competition?
Well, they have already started working him in at guard. That is something that they've mentioned. Now, when I say that, I mean they're giving him some sprinkles, some experience, not anything that they're like talking about moving him full time or anything like that.
Yeah,
but he
said scout team, and it's not a lot.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's the beginnings of sprinkling him in. So
okay,
I don't think they're overwhelming him by giving him some exposure. He has an offensive tackle body type. I also think his athleticism says he could probably transition inside.
Right.
But I don't think he necessarily needs to transition inside. I think he can develop into, a tackle level, like an NFL level tackle. The hard part is we haven't seen him since he was getting roasted at last training camp. And the talk is there, the speculation is there, the word from the coaches is all there. It's all positive. It's all he's made steps. But until we see him, we won't know the progress. Yeah. Until we see him push inside, we won't know how he's going to transition inside, because he's a big dude.
Yeah.
Like, he's a really big dude.
Massive.
And so for that girth can help him with blocking people out and shutting out the gaps. But his height, it's the Broderick Martin syndrome. It's how do you get low, right? Now Dan Skipper for as tall as he is, somehow is able to bend a little bit. It's
Right.
weird. It's kind of
Well,
awkward, but
it's
he bends at the waist more
yeah.
than he should. But Dan has shown he can play inside.
Yeah.
He's done it before. So Manu can do it like physically, but like, can he actually do it at a peak level, or is he going to have, the same issues that Broderick has? That we don't know. Like,
Right.
it's a faster game inside. You're not going to worry about getting beat outside like he was all training camp. So like, you can eliminate some of those weaknesses, but there's a lot. It's a very different game on the inside than on the island.
Yeah, I mean, I think the imagery there when I'm thinking about Manu play at guard, it's like Halapuli Vati Vaitai, right? It's
Right. I mean, that's what you're hoping for, right?
right. But when it comes to Dan's comments, and I wrote about this in Pride of Detroit Direct, I think this is all being overblown a little bit. Like, this is just Dan kind of riffing, which he does a lot. Now, of course, we don't really know what they think of Manu yet because like you said, we haven't seen him actually practice for quite some time. But to me, he made it sound like, yeah, Manu hasn't done a lot of guard. He's basically just sitting there as part of the scout team to be blocked, to be run into by the first team defense. And so to me, that was just him like, hey, maybe we do this, maybe we do this, maybe we do this, and just like coming up with a bunch of ideas. I am kind of the belief a little bit that let's not overload this guy. Let's make him learn one position, learn all the nuances of being a tackle, and see if he can figure it out. I think it's far too early to start sprinkling in any sort of significant guard reps for a guy unless you are certain it's not going to work out at tackle. And we certainly haven't got any sense from the coaching staff that they don't like Manu as a tackle. There was that article from Justin Rogers that said they were actually very pleased with the progress he made from, training camp to the end of the season. We haven't seen that. Could be, he could just be saying that to say that, to support one of his guys. But I don't think it would make sense to move him inside unless you were just sure that it wasn't going to work out in tackle. And I don't know if you could figure that out in 1 year with Giovanni Manu. Like, there was so much swimming through his head, I'm sure, in his rookie season, not just because, he's coming from British Columbia, not just because it's a big jump in competition, but because he's a rookie. That's what happens your rookie year. You get overloaded with information. So let's see the tackle thing through before we start throwing him on the interior. That's where I'm at. All right, let's move away from the guard position. I want to talk about this because I did a little research on this before and realized this new rule is something completely different than I think it was being billed as. Nate Savage asks, with the use of Sony's Hawkeye technology to measure first downs in 2025, how would a coach challenging the spot on the field work out? So
why don't you start since you've researched it?
Yeah. If you haven't heard, they are replacing the chain gang, essentially. The chain gang will still exist, but they are secondary now to this Hawkeye technology that involves, I think, 6 or 8 cameras in special spots to essentially measure where the ball is. Now, okay, so here's what it was billed as. I think a lot of people are like, oh, this is going to spot the football now, and now we're going to have more accurate spottings, and everything's going to be a lot better. We're not going to have this situation that happened in the Chiefs game where this was clearly a first down, but they couldn't measure it. No, that's not what this is at all. This is just, okay, the refs spotted the ball here. We can tell from our technology that it's a first down. We can tell from our technology it's not a first down. It is not involved in the spotting process at all. It is just measuring. It is just essentially replacing, hey, we need to stop the clock. Let's bring in the chains. You don't need to do that anymore because now you have these laser technology sets. Oh, no, you're 3 inches short based on where the ball is. So if you want to challenge the spot, it's going to work exactly like it did before, where the refs are going to spot it somewhere. You say, hey, it was actually 5 feet ahead of that, and it's a first down. They'll look in the same cameras they've been looking at forever, spot the ball where they think it is, and this is not going to change the spotting of the football at all. It's simply just going to save them time when it comes from bringing the chains in. That's it. That's all this is.
Isn't there a problem with the location of like the chip in the ball or something like that prevents them from being able to. I forget, there was an
Right.
article
Yeah,
on
because
it.
you have to know what the orientation of the football is when your knee is down. So it's not just about where the chip is; it's about where is it laying on its side? Is it up and down when your knee goes down? Um,
Mhm.
it's super complicated, which is why I don't think they have the technology to spot the ball yet. They can't just do it with cameras. I don't think.
Yeah, there was I don't think it was it might have been an article, or it might have just been like a big tweet thread or something like that from one of the
Yeah,
guys that does some of the advanced technology stuff for the NFL.
yeah.
And he
Is
was
that
saying
Sam
that there
guy,
was,
right?
yeah, he does like next gen or something like that. And
Sam Schwartzstein.
I believe he was saying that um, the shape of the football
Mm-hmm.
and knowing when the whistle blew, and like there were all these factors that go into making it like a more challenging thing than like a tennis ball or the soccer ball, like
Right.
you kind of see in other sports.
Yep. All right, we'll try to fit. Yeah, let's fit two more questions in here real quick before we go on our break here. BZ Sky asks, why would the Lions sign two big money safeties? I like Kirby, but isn't the smart move to let him walk in free agency, draft his replacement, and pay Branch? You can't build teams paying two safety star money.
Well, I think you can if you prioritize that position. That's really the key, is what positions on your team do you want to invest the money in order to achieve the goals that you want to, either on offense or on defense. For the Lions, they want to invest on the offensive line, but as I just said a little bit earlier, they spend the majority of their money at tackle and center, because those are the key pivots points that they feel are important, and they feel they can replace those guards a little easier. So they spend more money at those key spots.
Right.
You're spending money on a receiver, and if you're also going to spend money on a tight end eventually, maybe you're only spending one receiver, one tight end, but maybe you're still spending money on two running backs, because that's an important value to your identity on offense. And
Right.
so with the defensive scheme, where do you prioritize the value? And with the Lions, they prioritize safety at a pretty high level. And so if you're utilizing your safeties at a peak top 4 or 5 position, and both safeties are a top 5 position on your defense, you can absolutely pay them. It's just a matter of knowing that if you're going to pay them, you're going to need to go lighter somewhere else. You don't always have to have one safety getting paid and one safety on a rookie contract. You can have both safeties getting paid in another position on a rookie contract to
Right.
balance that out. So I don't get caught up on the positions as much as, what type of player are they? Where do they fit? How important are they? Are they within like the top? Are they a top 5 player on your defense? If they are, you pay them.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to look at last year's defense, especially early in the season, and not say that those two guys are two of the most important players on their defense, right? They were jockeying for most interceptions in the NFL for a lot of the early part of the season, and I think when you think of a guy like Brian Branch, maybe it helps to not just think of him as a safety. Think of him as a corner. Think of him as a nickel. Think of him as a linebacker. He does all of those things. That makes him pretty darn important. And then when you talk about Kirby, he is going to be the source of a lot of your turnovers. He was last year, and I don't think that was a flub. And you know why I don't think that was a flub? Because he had 4 in his rookie season. Then he had 4 in his second season. And so he is a turnover machine because he has that range, because he has those ball skills, because the Lions funnel their players to their safeties. That's part of the reason why they love man coverage so much, is it funnels those players to the safeties where those guys can make plays. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think there is this, and I've probably been guilty of it too, thinking where like, hey, you can't pay 2 of these players at the same position. They're talking about it in Cincinnati right now, right? You can't pay both your wide receivers like that. That's asinine. You're going to get in trouble. Well, you're only going to get in trouble if you're not compensating elsewhere. And that is the whole thing that the Lions are going to have to do anyways. They have to compensate their entire roster with all these high market good players with young, talented rookies. And I think it makes sense, like you said, to just kind of think of it like a team. Don't get hung up on position. Think of it as a team. You have these 7, 8, 9 guys you're going to be paying top end money. So you're going to have the bottom part of your roster filled with really talented guys that aren't costing you money. And there just has to be a balance of the scales on both sides. It doesn't matter what positions are on the heavy part of the scale, what positions are on the light side of the scale. Now, you'd like to be, in fact, I think you could even make the argument that positions of lower value, quote unquote lower value, if you're paying those and you're getting extraordinary deals on players of high value positions, that might actually be a better way to balance your budget anyways. So I get the consternation just because it looks weird. If I went digging into the NFL history, how many teams are built with 2 extremely high paid safeties? Probably not a lot. But it was 3 years ago in which drafting a running back in the top 15 was ludicrous. And now it seems like teams are scrambling to do it. So you kind of build teams the way you want teams to be built. And the way the Lions have built their team so far is valuing safeties. And it has worked out, generally speaking. I know the defense hasn't been great the entire time, but last year really felt like the first culmination of having pieces everywhere, including at safety. And it worked out pretty damn good for the first 3 months of the season. Next question. We'll stick with safety here. The third safety role. A question from Cool Down Rat says, what is the role of the third safety going to be, i.e. snaps, formation? Is he currently on the roster?
If you're talking third safety, no. I don't think they're currently on the roster because you are probably looking at a competition between 2 UDFAs from last year. In Norris and Strickland. Yep. Those guys are battling it out. And I think both could be really good safety 4s, but I don't know if they're ready to be safety 3s. At the same time, when you look at the investment that they're putting into their corners, I do wonder if they're going to shift a little bit of their secondary focus to having more corners than safeties. Like last year, they had three corners and then 3 safeties, and they kind of went in. Like I wonder this year if it's going to be like they got like 4 starting corners and then like 2 starting safeties, and they don't really have like a true backup. I think you're going to need a backup, but I don't know if that third safety is necessarily going to find the field the way that Iffy did.
Right.
The reason I say that is because they guaranteed all of Avonte Maddox's deal, right? And the fact that that's fully guaranteed tells me he's probably making the roster.
Yep.
And if he's probably making the roster, we're talking about Terrion Ennis, Reed, Amik, Maddox, and then Rock Ya-Sin would be 6. Right. Like, and then Dorsey's going to be
Khalil.
7.
Yeah. Yep.
And so that's 7 corners that are probably on your roster, which means you're going to have to be limited. Can you get 4 safeties? Yeah. Can you get 5? Well, probably not anymore. Last year they did. They went with 5 last year. Now you're probably going down to 4. It just seems the way they're constructing their roster right now, it kind of looks like they're looking to have more of their nickel work with actual like nickel corners as opposed to that hybrid safety. Now, I'd love to have a safety. And some of the safeties that they've looked at, I think, are great fits. But at the same time, I don't know when they're going to want to invest. I think in that 3rd or 4th round, there's a couple of safeties that are really, really good and could be really fun and could be like, hey, I can play single high. I can play in the slot. They can fit the system real well. Could also be insurance if you don't get a deal worked out for Kirby. But if you're going to invest in a 3rd rounder, well, man, you're probably going to want to play those guys, So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. But right now, the guys I kind of have pegged, I kind of look at as I think they're top 100. Maybe they slide to the 4th.
Yeah. just to go back to the corner thing for a second, like the one disagreement or slight change I would make is I don't think Rock Yassin at this point is considered a lock to the roster. I think they could have their top 6 without him. I think the top 6 ahead of him are pretty much a lock, and I am including Khalil Dorsey in that because I don't think we ever really talked about it, but Khalil Dorsey got a 2-year deal, which is, I mean, it's not a high end deal. He could not make the team this year, and they wouldn't face a lot of dead money. But I think there's a little bit of a statement in there when you're signing him to a 2-year deal when just about everyone else got a 1-year deal.
The trick, just to chime in on that real fast, is the thing that stood out to me was the 2-year deal definitely stood out. But what also stood out is he's only got about $300,000 guaranteed, which means it's not a ton.
Yep.
At the same time, Avonte Maddox has 1.2 fully guaranteed, and Yassin has 0 guaranteed.
Right.
So I do agree with you that I think Dorsey is ahead. At the same time, it just seems like that's where their investment has been. Right. And it wouldn't surprise me to see them keep 7.
The other thing I wanted to mention really quick was just the fact that I can't remember. I think it was Holmes who mentioned that Avonte has a little safety in him. It's got a little safety in him. Now, again, like, we don't want to read too much into this, and it could just be kind of him riffing again where, there's not necessarily big plans for him to play at safety. But the main point I want to make here, though, is I don't think the Lions are necessarily going about things and saying, hey, we need to fill Fatu Melifonwu's role. It was more like, hey, this guy has a really cool skill set. Let's figure out ways to use it. They don't have him, so they don't need to fill that role. They don't need that role. This is a team that has said time and time again and proved it on the field that they are going to build defensive roles around the players that they have. That is a player they no longer have, so that is a role that they no longer have. They don't that even though Avonte Maddox can play some safety, that's not he can't do what Iffy can do. It's a completely different skill set. Sure. He hasn't. I think he has like 12 pass rush snaps in his career. So that aspect of his game is not the same. So, would the Lions love that? And if there's a guy in the draft that they think might be capable of doing that, would they draft that guy? Yeah, sure, potentially. But I think if you're kind of looking at the roster and saying, okay, who's going to fill that role? I think you're looking at it the wrong way. And with that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, more of your Detroit Lions questions here on the Midweek Mailbag as we start talking about the NFL Draft. Again, less than 3 weeks away here. Gearing up for it as we come back right here on the Midweek Mailbag. We'll be right back. Okay. What's up, everybody? You guys had, I think, a lot of questions during that segment, and I did not see any of them. So if you guys want to have some questions answered, send them my way. I do have a couple that one that specifically asked to be addressed during the break. 2 other ones that I thought were a little bit better served during the break than on the show just because of the time needed for those. So I want to get to those. In the meantime, I'm going to read all the alerts that came in the past 34 minutes here. First, we had Silver Rush, 23 months subscribed to us on Twitch. Appreciate that. Dr. Dunlap, 30 months subscribed on Twitch. Ryan Toledo, 31 months, says first live show since the season. Wow. Was that a conscious choice of yours because you couldn't take it? If so, no judgment. I understand needing a break. I certainly could have used one too, but unfortunately I'm kind of tied to this team and kind of have to talk about them every single day of my life. Not that that's a curse. I mean, it's fun. I don't want to seem ungrateful. K Fletch, 19 months, says can't call it midweek this week. Happy main show. I don't know what that means. Is that some holiday that's happening?
Every time we're on, it's a holiday.
MCDC Forever 22 months says can only be the main mailbag when it isn't midweek. Glad to be listening live. Appreciate it. Drew Falcon, 26 months, says RIP number 26. Do we want to talk about this? Because I think you and I are both among the people that don't care about jersey numbers. We're probably in like the top 1% of people who don't care about jersey numbers. But at the same time, it's hard for me not to feel for fans that just bought jerseys and things like that. It sucks. Sure.
What's funny is in my timeline, I expected to see a lot of people complaining, and I only saw a handful of them complaining. I saw more people saying, "Oh, this is my opportunity to get one of the new jerseys in a new number," or my 26 Gibbs jersey is now limited edition. It's now a collector's item, and I don't know. I was surprised that I expected a lot more backlash than there was. There were still people that were
there definitely are
upset. Certainly.
Yeah.
And I get at the same time, I was surprised how many people were not.
I was going to mention that, Shane. This is JMO's third number now. He was 18 for a while, I remember, because it was I don't think this was why, but kind of build it as the reverse Calvin Johnson as a cool way to be an homage to him. Then obviously he went to 9. Now he's at 1. But I think we had what is there a reason why he wasn't 1 last year? Who was 1 last year? Anybody?
Someone was,
because he made I remember it was a mild controversy. The minute that Jeff Okudah got traded, he immediately tweeted, "Oh, Maurice Alexander." Well, okay, so he could have had it over Maurice Alexander if he wanted. I don't think, but if you remember, the second that Jeff Okudah got traded, JMO went on Twitter and be like, "I need to cop that number 1," and everyone was like, "Dude, your teammate just got traded. Don't be a dick." That was back when everything JMO did had 30 minutes of talk radio, dissecting everything he did. But I don't know. It's just, to me, it's odd that it's taken him a while to get the number that we all know he wanted. But it was also really funny. I don't know if you saw that Jameer went on Instagram and said
he hated it.
He hated 26, and he just wore it for 2 years. So in that sense, I'm happy he's wearing a number he doesn't hate.
Yeah, I thought it was slick, but that's just me. It's gonna be weird. I don't know. I'm not a 0 guy. At the same time, I understand that I am not cool. a new generation fan, right? There's a whole wave of younger people that think that 0 is awesome, and that's great. And I'm sure that those jerseys are going to sell like crazy. I'm not a huge 0. I didn't like it when Marvin had it.
I don't know why, but it felt right with Marvin had it.
Yeah,
the old vet. The old vet getting one more opportunity to do something that he didn't get an opportunity his entire career.
Only because Khalif had his Marvin's 11, right? So.
Right, that's true. Yeah,
but
I don't know. I saw a lot of people are having fun with the fact that Dave Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs have 5-0.
Mm-hmm.
So a Honolulu 5-0, I think is a lot of people have been trying to make that the nickname of the backfield. But I mean, I think you already have Sonic and Knuckles. I thought, what was the Jazz one or whatever? It was, oh God, I forgot. I don't know.
Old Jazz or
no, it was Rhythm and Blues or something.
Oh,
Rhythm and Brews is what it was.
Oh.
Rhythm and Brews, I think was a very good nickname for them. I think the Hawaii 5-0 thing is a little forced. I don't know.
My kids have really gotten into the Sonic. If you haven't noticed, over there, right?
And
To
the
the
Pez
point,
dispensers. I see the Pez
to the
dispensers.
to the point that they gave me a Sonic Pez dispenser for Christmas, but couldn't find the knuckles and were very disappointed. And then when we were on vacation, they found it and about lost their minds. They were like, "Oh my God, you have to buy this!"
I haven't seen anyone that excited about a Pez dispenser since Silo.
Wow, you watched it. Good.
I did. I didn't like it.
Oh, really?
I didn't.
I liked it.
Here's the weird thing about Silo. Not to get off on a.
There's a third season coming. So.
Yeah, I think
and maybe
they may have been
a fourth.
Yeah, I think may have been renewed through 4.
Yeah, because there's 4 books.
That's what I was gonna say. It really made me want to read the books because I don't think they're doing a good job with the TV show. But the story is interesting. The idea of the story to me is very interesting, but I don't like the characters except for the main character. I don't care about any of the storylines. I don't care about anybody other than the main character. I did think, and this is a very mild spoiler for like the first 3 episodes of Silo. So I'm want to be very clear. If you don't want to hear spoilers for the first 3, let's say 3 episodes of Silo, mute this for the next 30 seconds. I thought it was cool that you didn't know who the main character of the TV show was going to be until the 3rd episode, because they just got rid of who looked like they were going to be the main characters in both the 1st and 2nd episode. I thought that was cool. But then, like, all I wanted to do was spend time with that main character. And nothing else. All right. Spoiler over. Hopefully that visual cue will allow people to get back to it. Anyways. Red Wings already up 2-0? Dang. I thought that game just started. Okay. Let me get back to the alerts here. And then we'll answer some of your questions. So if you've already thrown in your question, I may have already gotten scrolled out of existence here. Captain James Kirk, 47 months, says it's the midweek main show. Happy 47 months to me and another great PODD this week. Thanks, guys. Hey, appreciate it. Glad you liked it. Austin Mammoth, 31 months, says, my question for the late night mailbag is, can Jeremy start wearing tank tops to show off his new ink? I've never been a tank top wearer, as you can tell by the fact that I can't even say the words. But like short sleeves like this, you can almost, it's peeking out a little bit. Yeah, there you go.
Aren't you supposed to have that covered in like that and like some like lotion on it right now?
I covered it for 48 hours.
It's supposed to stay like, it's not supposed to dry out for a week.
No, but I've been lotioning it.
Okay.
I'm all right.
I tell you,
I know it's been 30 years since you got your last tattoo.
I think it's been 25.
Is it really?
But yeah, I think I got them all in like the late 90s. But
back in Nam.
But yeah. It was funny. I tried to did my joke work at least a little bit? Like did it make you pause just
I
a little
Googled
bit?
it. I was fairly certain you were not telling the truth, but I did. So as I think, am I on the plane at this point? I think I probably am.
No, I think you were close to.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Eric says, you're not supposed to go on planes right after you get a tattoo, right? You have to wait like 4 or 5 days. And I'm like, okay, first of all, my mom has like 12 tattoos. She went with me. I feel like she has a pretty good understanding of tattoo rules. So I think Eric is BSing me. So I immediately say, I don't know. I said something like, oh, don't lie to me. But then right after I sent that, I did Google it. and here's the thing: there were some people that were like, "Yeah, like the pressure is gonna like mess with the healing process." And I'm like, everyone else is like, "No, what are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah, no, I don't have a tramp stamp, but if you want to get that visual, you can.
Yeah, last time or during my live stream when I was getting it, was it then? I was talking about how you have tattoos, and I've seen them, but I don't remember them, and I do remember that the only time you can see them is when you're swimming, and so
yeah,
I let chat's mind go wild there, and everyone went to tramp stamp.
Yeah, no, they're all in this range, but they're shoulder and back, and just they're not anything big. Nothing elaborate.
But here I'm always a little bit nervous sharing family photos because of what has happened in the past, but I will share this.
Oh, did she get it?
She got one too.
Get out of town.
Yeah. Hers does not have the mustache.
Wow.
She didn't want it. I will. One last thing to say about the tattoo, and then we can move on. I will note that it does not have the words SB Nation or Pride of Detroit on it by design. Just in case.
I still think it would have looked slick on your leg or something.
Yeah.
Not on those pythons though. I understand why you went with it.
Yeah, only special people get to see the guns out, you know?
Yeah.
I should take this opportunity again to thank everyone who donated during Movember to make that happen. We raised over $50,000 for cancer research at the Rogel Cancer Center at the University of Michigan, and that's part of the reason why I almost kind of wanted this, to recognize one of the proudest things I've accomplished at the position I have is to make a difference in a cause I care about, and now I have that permanent reminder on me, which is pretty damn cool. And yeah, plus like now it's a cool memory, a cool family memory that I have with my mom. So without all of your guys' support, wouldn't have been able to do that. I guess I could have still gotten a tattoo, but it wouldn't have had the same meaning.
There you
go. All right, let me get to the rest of the alerts here. Rise Beast, $5 donation via YouTube says, "Thank you guys for distracting me for a bit. My colon gets to have its first photo shoot on Tuesday, and I'm nervous. Keep up the good work, guys." Listen, I'm right behind you there, Ray. And Erik is 10 years ahead of you, so.
Well, yeah, I tell you, the prep is worse than the actual event.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, the prep is, I hate the prep, but it's funny at my doctor wants me to have my checks more frequently, but my doctor who performed the procedure doesn't, and I'm like, I'm siding with you.
That's an easy choice.
Yeah, but look, it's a serious business, man. You had a colleague, not too long ago.
Sure.
Right. So, yeah,
it's important, checked. And you'll be fine. Like you said, I think the anxiety of the clearing out your system and obviously results are worse than the actual procedure.
And if you have a sense of humor, like the procedure itself is you're asleep during, so it's no big deal. But the after effects when you wake up can be hilarious if you plan it right.
I'm not sure where that is going, but I'm gonna let that just hang out as an unknown.
Oh, all right, cool.
If you want to explain yourself, you're more than welcome to, but I'm not going to push the button there.
Okay. So one, you go to this office, right? And so like you're not. It's kind of like a hospital like setup where you have your different like rooms, but it's not like necessarily you're not enclosed by rooms. Sometimes it's just curtains and stuff
Yeah.
like that, depending on where you go. And so you can kind of hear things that are going on around you.
Uh-huh.
And so you can hear people coming out of anesthesia, which is always hilarious,
Sure.
right?
Sure. Yes.
And and then you add on top of it the fact that basically they're pushing air into your body that only has one way to exit. And then so you have this funny eclectic symphony of
Symphony.
of air leaving and people waking out of this being disoriented. And it can create some fun cinema for you. And then and then if you want to be like a man, and be like stupid dad humor, you can do things like I did, where I was like, "Oh,
No, you?
come here, come here," and then release the air.
Really? I love how like delicately you're walking around the word fart right now.
I'm just saying, but man, it's not like they you get cleared out, so it's not like you walk into this place and it smells like a dumpster, right? Like it's all just
Just there.
yeah, just
Yeah,
air
yeah.
leaving. It's fine.
I will say one of my favorite viral videos are people waking up from like dental surgery or whatever, where they're just like clearly still groggy and under the influence of whatever drugs that they had to put them under. It started with David After Dentist, of course, the classic. But there's so many of just like, oh god, there's this one of this maybe teenage girl, maybe a little bit older, clearly got some sort of dental surgery, and she's jamming out to music and like trying to twerk while her mom's like, "Don't twerk in front of me." And she's
My
just like, "I want to twerk right now." It's really funny.
my wife had procedure within the first year or so of us dating, and she did not want me to pick her up, and she wanted her dad, and then her dad couldn't do it, so I had to go pick her up. And when she came out of it, she was just like telling truths. It was like
the truth
she was
serum.
like she was like, you know, I think your mother loves me more than she loves you. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. And she's like, she bought me twice as many Christmas presents as she bought you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of a simple guy. And she's like, I'm pretty sure she loves me more. I'm sorry I had to tell you that.
I love that. Just the inhibitions are gone.
It's funny. It's funny
Yeah.
watching, you know.
Yeah. All right, let's get through these last ones, and then I promise we'll get to some of the live chats here, questions. Sapaz, thank you for the follow. Joshua Mercer, 100 bit, says they can't be when we have Starks on the way.
Yeah, dude, Starks is fantastic.
Malachi Starks.
I've said that I love Malachi, but you have to pay first to get him.
Yeah,
And
he's not going to be there at 60.
No. And if you're going to pay first to get him, that's probably all she wrote for Curb, because Malachi can play single high. Malachi can play in the slot. I'd play him in the slot right off the bat, and then I'd work him back in and like get him experience with the other guys, and then he'd be your Kirby, and that'd be really, I'd hate to see it, but he's
So,
Malachi's
do you,
he's really good.
do you think there's any chance they hold off on a Kirby extension until the draft just in case?
Maybe the two guys that they met with at the combine, or at least the two guys that we know about, are Andrew Mukubu from Texas.
Kube?
Makube,
I don't know.
Kube is it Kube? Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
then and then Jonas Sanker. Sanker does not get the love that he should. He is he's something. If I had to guess, he might he could be their third round pick. Like he's something good. Um, Under the radar. I think some people not everyone has them in their top 100s. If they do, those that go past 100 all kind of have them like as maybe like a fourth rounder or something like that. You can play single high, you can play the slot. He's going to be a stud special teamer. Um, just good. He's over 6 feet, he's over 200 pounds. Like those are two good things. He can move. Like he's very fluid. It's a lot to like about Sanker. The more I looked into him, the more I was like, dude, this guy is way under the radar for what where I think he should go. Um, Makuba or Makub,
Makuba.
however you
Yeah.
pronounce it. He's like rangy. I mean, he's all over the place. He lives a lot more down in the box in the robber areas, but he's really good too. Real good nose for the ball, real good athleticism. I think most people kind of have him pegged in that third round range. I think that's where he could go. He might even go ahead of where the Lions pick, but I I think both those guys should be on your third round radar because they're both good. They could both be a starter if you needed them to be, and then could be a long-term
Yeah.
project. Could help you go three safety sets, which could offset. They can kind of match up. You can play more matchup against more athletic tight ends with these guys. So there's a lot to like. And I again, Sanker's the guy that not a lot of people are talking about that I really liked. I've spent more time this week looking at some of the guys that they met with, and there's some crazy like it's like, oh, I totally get why they're
Yeah.
meeting with this guy, and I totally get why this guy's in on the top 30 because I hadn't heard of him, and now I watch this film and I'm like, oh my god, this guy's
This fits.
amazing.
Right.
You're like, yeah, it's like this guy looks like Sione Vaki, like,
Right.
and so yeah, some of these guys, like it really makes a ton of sense fit wise why they've been connected to the Lions.
So you think they're already looking to replace Sione Vaki? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, but I think you could have two Sione Vakis.
You
That
can't
would
have
be-
two Sione Vakis and a Craig Reynolds, though.
Yeah, that would be harder. But so okay, I mean if we're gonna pivot here a little bit, just just for a
I'm
second.
kidding. I'm kidding.
Lan Larison, the UC Davis running back. I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about this guy. Okay.
This is a guy they're
He's
bringing
a-
in for a meeting, right, or something?
They brought him for a top 30.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about him. I can't even find pro day numbers on him. He's 5'11", 215, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I watched some of his cut-ups and I found a couple write-ups on him. And this kid is like a downhill runner.
Mm-hmm.
Yet his hands are insane. He's got like these crazy good hands. He's got good pass pro. He can play the Wildcat, and you can watch his game and just be like, that dude is going to like just light people up. He can be a kick returner and he can be a gunner. Like he's got all kinds of range on special teams.
Yeah.
7th round pick, UDFA. I think he'd be a fun guy to bring in because I couldn't fit all the things that I wanted to write about him in my little like what's his superpower. I had like 5 superpowers because I was like, he's got so much like crazy range. It was something different. One other guy, and then I'll start up. Pat Bryant, wide receiver from Illinois. Okay.
Okay.
I watched him and I was like, oh, okay, I kind of get the fit. I put him right by Torrey Horton, who I really like as well, who I think is like a kind of athlete. These are like third, fourth round range guys, wide receivers, young, can play X, good body builds, good speed. Well, Horton has better speed, but I started diving into I'm adding in the PFF numbers, like what are their routes, yards per route run, all this stuff like that, right? I'm at that phase of my build. And most of the receivers, the way I have it set up is I have it set up where if you're good at one thing, it usually means you're not going to be as good at the other. And so I'll track both categories, right? So for example, if you're at the higher end of depth of target, it also means you're probably going to have more drops because that's a harder, right? If you have a higher yak, it usually means because you have a lower depth of target, right? Okay. So I do the balance. I pick this thing specifically to balance themselves out. And every once in a while, you find a guy who can kind of hit into the blue. So blue is good, red's bad. Right. A guy who can kind of hit in the blue in all of the categories, even when he shouldn't, he still hits in the blue and all. And that's Pat Bryant. Pat Bryant kind of all blue in all the production categories. He's the only one. And because again, it's designed to show the weakness. Right. But he just consistent.
Does
Nothing really like exceptional, like only had 78 only had 78 targets last year, which is low. Like some of these guys had double that.
Right.
But his yards per route run is 2.8. Yards per reception is 7. Yards per target depth, 14.4. And then his drop rate is where is it? I lost it. 3. Like, that's good. It's like it's all good, right? Like, it's just so again, I'm sorry, 1.8, not 3. It's another guy that it's like, hey, you want to get younger at the position, you need an X. This is a guy who's steady and is a guy you can develop and move. And so that's another guy, like, keep an eye
on. All right, since we were talking about running backs and receiving, I did want to get to a question that we got, a very simple one that's very near and dear to your heart. Arcade Jimmy, aka James P. from our Pride of Detroit Direct, says, during the break, any chance you and Erik could please show specifically the difference between the wheel and the Texas route, like you were talking about last mailbag, when you do a film play share? I mean, I brought up, I have 2 examples. Brought up both Jahmyr Gibbs, one from college, one from professional. And so I am going to share my screen. You can see this, right?
I see it says share. There you go.
Yeah. All right. I'm assuming this is Gibbs. This is a wheel route, which basically just means you're kind of running outside and turning it upfield. Like, essentially like a fly, except you're in the backfield, so you're going to have to go out and up. Essentially. And the idea there is to just basically outrun a linebacker. You're typically on a linebacker, or you typically have a linebacker man-to-man to you, and it's a man beater. It's a run your speed. And so this is actually a zone, so while it looks like he's open, it's a tough pass. Are they actually going to throw it to him? They kind of do, yeah. So, I mean, this isn't a clean wheel because I think the idea is to hit him over the top. But because they're in the zone here and you have this guy who looked like a man corner dropping to kind of a safety position, has him on the over the top, he almost throws like a back shoulder here, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But the route is a wheel route. A Texas route is very different. Let's watch this one more time, though. It's pretty damn good adjustment by Gibbs, by the way.
The wheel is designed to line you up inside to get you manned up versus linebacker, and then you just outspeed him,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
That's a matchup. You're trying to catch them in man, and then you're trying to just outrun them to the edge, and then you get them in chase mode, and then they have to turn and run, and it's usually favors the running back, and if you can place it on them,
I wonder if I can just
really
find
tough.
a good example of it working somewhere. We don't want sound.
The Texas is uncoverable.
Austin Eckler, wheel route.
Outside stress.
Yeah.
See, they still hit over the top.
This was more like this. There's a lot of stuff happening in the middle that it's kind of mesh-like, I think, where this is probably the man-to-man responsibility here, but you can see
he cuts underneath. He's not even close.
Yeah. Anyways, that is a wheel. The Texas, Erik knows this play pretty well, is also known as an angle route, which is exactly what an angle route sounds like. You kind of run 1 degree, and then you just kind of turn it up the other way. So run to the outside. It looks like an outside route. You get this linebacker to flip his hips one way, you cut the other way, and he toast. Can I slow this down? Nope. Great.
Is the best play in football.
He's a big angle route guy, Texas route guy. I'm a big wheel route guy.
You can run that angle.
I'm a rock and roll.
They can run that with a lot of guys on their team. You can Gibbs is really good at it. Vaki is really good at it. You could
Laporta can run that.
St. Brown has done it where they drop him back and shift him, and then they've never done it with Khalif, but Khalif would murder people with it.
True. Even at 31 or whatever he is now, he could still work it. What are you doing?
Do you know who that is?
Is that a 23?
25.
A 25?
Who's old school lines? 25?
It's obviously Theo Riddick. If we're talking Texas routes, the king of. Oh man, that's what I really should have. I looked up Theo Riddick.
Get a Riddick Texas route. If you want to watch teach tape on how to do it. Yes, Theo Riddick is old school now. I'm sorry. He's like four coaching staffs ago, unfortunately.
There was only one, and it wasn't even that clean of a route. I'm not going to show it. All right. Let me get through the rest of these alerts because I'm still not done yet.
Do you remember when Justin asked Gibbs if he had ever watched Theo Riddick run one? And he... Mm-hmm.
Smart.
And he was like, no. He's like, you should.
Yeah. Oh, man, the Theo Riddick hype train. I forgot. That was like a meme before memes were a thing. Just the Thomas the Tank Engine with Theo Riddick's face on.
Oh, yeah.
Go Play 921. Thank you for the 20 months. Subscribe to the channel. Romeo, thank you for the 14 months. Damian Smith, £5 super chat, says Rod Wood answered my question, by the way. To Dan Miller, Lions will look at the long-term evolution of Ford Field in 4 to 5 years after the Final Four. Yeah, surprisingly not a question that was brought up during kind of the main media session, which is almost always a Rod Wood question, which is, hey, anything new coming to Ford Field? But he did tell Dan Miller, they're going to hold off on any renovations now because they're getting the Final Four in 2027, I think. And he said, we don't want to start on any renovations that won't be ready by then. But in 4 to 5 years, we are considering a new wave of renovations. And they don't have any in mind, but they're considering, if that makes sense. That's a target of hey, this is when we should consider upgrading the facility. Ice Cecil, 42 months, subscribe to the channel. Just says cool. Someone named Ice just saying cool. I like it. MJ Kimball, 53 months, says 53 average punt return yards. What does that mean? For who?
Wait, what? Say that one again.
53 average punt return yards.
Oh,
Per
probably
game?
for the running back I was talking about.
Oh, maybe. That's a lot of punt return yards.
That's my guess.
And then Shredder's Rage, 19 months subscribed to the channel. Okay. We are clear of all the alerts. Thank you again to everybody who's supporting both on the Twitch and YouTube sides.
High school
stats. That's video game stats. That's wild. All right, so we can answer any of your guys' questions, so you can send them in. Corey Rayburn on Twitter did ask, and I'm curious if you have an answer to this, but says, what's your favorite non-Lions football podcast? Do you listen to any?
I watch. I do watch more during during like draft prep, like when the season ends.
Yeah,
and I'm trying to get caught up on my draft prep. Trevor Sikkema and Connor Rogers do a really good show for PFF where they do like a series of like, this is what the receiver class looks like. And they talk about their rankings and different guys. It's very straightforward. And I go back and I listen to a lot of those old ones to get myself kind of caught up as part of my prep. But that's more like seasonal.
Yeah.
Right.
I do the Athletic Football Show every now and then. I think Robert Mays and Derek Klassen, and obviously sometimes they get Dane during draft season on that. I think they just like. I found it very fun to listen to them talk about the playoffs. They are very smart. The things that they pick up on the initial viewing of a game is outstanding. Like, it's something that I wish I could do. It's something that would take me several viewings of the all 22 to be like, oh yeah, if you notice, they were bringing their safety down into the box, probably around 70% of that. Now, some of that is like they get the advanced stats that I don't have the subscription to, the Stats Inc. stuff that costs like $10,000 to have access to and things like that. But like a lot of that they're just seeing live, which is very impressive. And so they know ball. They do, and they do, I always need to give some leeway to national guys talking about your local team that, quite frankly, I know more about. But they do a relatively good job. And, I actually, while I was in Florida and driving around this past week, I noticed they had a free agency episode of like, hey, 8 teams that aren't doing much in free agency, why you should or shouldn't freak out. And they were very much of like, yeah, why would Lions fans freak out? They got a top 3 roster. They have all these guys that they need to pay. What they're doing makes complete sense. And I'm just like, oh, that's refreshing to hear from a national guy. And so like I think they get it. I think they do enough research to understand each team. I think they did get one of the players' names wrong, but like I'm not gonna kill them over that when there's thousands of players in the NFL. So I would absolutely recommend that if you're looking for more national stuff.
Was the question non-Lions
football podcast?
Got it.
Are you gonna drop some non-football podcasts?
No, I was gonna say like I always find it. There's some fun podcasts out there about Detroit. If you're local and you're interested in learning about like the city, there's some historical. Like I listened to I think it was like 6 or 8 parter on like the history of Michigan and beer. Like, and it was fascinating. It went back and talked about like pre-prohibition and then how things like went during the prohibition era and then like how craft beer was introduced. And
did you like it because you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember when that happened.
The craft beer era. Yeah, I do. Um, no, but like I live in Rochester, and it was funny.
Doxed
They
yourself.
went well. People look. People have Google, um, and so I live not too far away from Rochester Mills, the brewery, and they brought up on that show. They're like, "Oh yeah, the brewmaster for Rochester Mills is the guy who helped get this company off the mat and this company off the mat." And it was like this one guy who like helped who started that was like help he was responsible for helping like all these other like really established craft breweries
Yeah.
around the state. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. I would have never even known that guy's like, that guy's place is a few
Yeah.
miles from me or whatever, right? And I'm like, that's pretty cool that he helped, you know,
What was the name of that
build
one
things
in
up.
case people didn't pick it up?
I have to look it up. It was just like the history of beer, I think is what it was called, but it was like specifically for Michigan.
Hmm.
It was told by, um, it's, what's
Jeff
the,
Daniels.
no. It was told by like the, the Detroit, not that I don't my kid just went to the DIA, so that's what keeps popping in my head. But the History Museum in Detroit,
Oh,
they're the ones that put it on.
got it. Just Google it.
That's pretty cool. I'll look it up. I'll find it.
Not you. I was telling people that are
I'm gonna
interested.
no, I don't care. Now I'm looking.
Nick the Greek 100 bit says Florida man Jeremy Reisman returns triumphantly with a Billboard testosterone prescription and a Billboard vasectomy. Let's get ready to bumble. Nice.
Can you see it?
Untold Detroit beer.
Yeah.
All right. We got a couple questions here about the Lions. This is a good one from RGA. Says, what's your feeling on Alex Anzalone getting an extension? So he's on the final year of his deal. I believe, I want to say it's his 31st, 31-year-old season coming up here. Yeah. What do you think? Is it time to potentially move on from Alex next offseason? Everyone has him like circled to be a New York Jet so that he can be for the Jets what he was here, which was a guy who really knows the defense they want to run and help teach all the linebackers around him and eventually maybe build out a Mike linebacker like they have with Jack Campbell. Is that something you see, or do you think the Lions like him so much that they aren't going to let him go?
It's tough because I would have said he'd get an extension before Derek Barnes got 3 years.
Sure.
When Derek Barnes got 3, that's when I was like, oh, maybe they are gonna lean into him and Jack a little bit more. And like we speculate all the time about how when are they going to have to start making tough decisions on some of their older players.
Yeah.
And his contract is coming up in the same offseason that they have an opportunity to sign the quad. And so like
Yep.
that's not great. And you're going to have Campbell, who's, you're talking about 5th-year option for, and you're possibly going to be extending him. You're already going to have Derek Barnes under contract. And I wonder where he falls in the pecking order. And I wonder if it's lower than maybe we may be anticipating. It's probably, I think it's certainly lower than where he actually is on the roster like this year. Like when we do our roster rankings, he's going to be way up there. But yeah, I don't know. He's a unique guy and he knows the system. And it's tough to replicate what he does. At the same time, you're giving a contract to a guy who's going to be 32.
Yeah.
And you are going to have just paid a younger linebacker, and you're going to be now paying the next, your Mike is on deck. So it's a tough
Yeah.
off season. Like
I
Derek's only going to be 27,
right.
So
I Everything you just said is exactly how I felt on Monday. I feel a little bit different today. And that's based on mostly Dan Campbell's press conference or media session, where he just kept bringing up Alex Anzalone as like integral parts of the team. He was talking about, the main leaders on the team. He goes, every voice has gotten more and more where he's talking about how he doesn't need to lead anymore, right? It's the players leading. And that was something he said, I think back in year 1 during Hard Knocks. He's just like, I'm not going to be the leader. I don't need to hold your hand. At some point, we need the voices in the room to command the room, to coach the football team. I just have to steer the boat in the right direction, whatever. And he goes, every year has gotten more and more where our leaders, St. Brown, Sewell, Goff, Hutch, Alex, have begun to take this thing over. And then a little bit later, he's talking about, but the question is, Ben Johnson's gone. Is it now the Dan Campbell offense? And he goes, it's never mine. It's the players' offense, right? It's St. Brown, it's Gibbs, it's Montgomery. On defense, it's Hutch, it's Aleem, it's freaking Alex, it's TA. It's just like he still views him as a like top 3 important guy on that side of the ball. At least that's how I'm reading the situation.
And I absolutely think he is.
Yeah.
This year.
Yeah. Right. At some point, it needs to be handed over to Jack.
Yep.
And I know they don't play the same position, but
correct.
He is going to be like eventually. You essentially want your Mike linebacker to be your most important linebacker, and I think you're right. I think that transition could very well happen this year, and I still ultimately feel like it probably makes the most sense to move on from Alex next year. But they love that guy so much that it's going to kill Dan Campbell. It like hopefully not what, literally, but like it's going to hurt.
The thing that really like changed my perspective on how Campbell and Holmes operate, is when they fired Don Muehlbach on his birthday.
Right.
Happy birthday, you're fired. But we're going to bring you back in as a coach. So don't worry. I know he regretted it, and I know he was really sad, and like he was in tears and stuff. But it helps me make my point more to ignore that part.
I'm glad you're admitting you're being dishonest with that take.
Yeah, I'm cherry picking. I'm cherry picking for sure.
Who hasn't done it before? Salem over on YouTube says, I asked this question over at Micro Mike and got laughed off the internet. So I ask you, and I'm being serious, do they look at a quarterback? If so, who and when is it a consideration?
I don't think they do this year.
Okay.
Because I think they still have faith in Hendon.
Yeah.
And Hendon isn't going anywhere, and I don't think they want to be boxed into keeping 3 quarterbacks on the roster.
Right.
And so I think that by itself should take them out of that conversation. Adding a veteran in to compete was a logical plan. I wish they would have got someone better than Kyle Allen, but I think
I'm not going to complain about it. They weren't going to spend $3 million a year on a guy to compete with Hendon Hooker. They were going to spend the vet minimum, and that's what they did, and they probably got what the vet minimum pays you, right? Like
right. Yes, 100%, because they still believe in Hendon, and they think Hendon can take the next step, but they also have to want to push him to make the next step. I really think it's Hendon's going to get another crack at being QB2. I like his talent. I have confidence that that he'll be able to win the job. And
Yeah.
will that be enough to keep them from drafting another quarterback next year? I mean, we'll see, but I don't think it's going to happen this year.
I don't either, but there gets to be a point in every draft where you're just like, I'm taking the best guy, right?
Sure.
Okay, if there is a guy that I viewed as a 4th round pick and he's available there in the 6th and he's a quarterback, they'll draft him.
Sure.
And that could happen.
I also just don't like this class too.
That's fair.
That's another, I guess, part of it.
But I'm with you. Everyone is interpreting all of the Hendon Hooker quotes, all the Kyle Allen quotes from this week in whatever way they want to. My interpretation is mostly we're just giving Hendon Hooker a kick in the pants a little bit. And listen, you can hear those words from me and think he needs a kick in the pants. That's not good. And I think that's a fair interpretation maybe of but at the same time, Dan Campbell is an expert motivator. And he is not just going to let his 3rd-year quarterback sit there complacently and beat out, I can't even remember the other young quarterback they have. Who they got late
on the roster?
Yeah, who they got late in training camp last year?
Jake Fromm.
I don't think they want Hendon Hooker sitting there, and not saying that he would just be kind of complacent and be like, well, if Fromm's my competition, I'm fine. Because, I mean, let's be honest. We may have all really liked how Fromm looked in that last preseason game. He's firmly quarterback 4 right now. So, I mean, this is just how the team operates. They want competition everywhere because competition brings the best out in everybody. And why wouldn't you want to try to bring the best out in your backup quarterback who has not had a lot of experience, right? So I fully expect day 1, I still think Hendon Hooker is going to be your QB too. I know sometimes they give it to the vet and make your young players work up. I don't think that's going to be the case with Hendon. I think he's going to be the number 2 guy until he isn't, and I don't expect him to lose it. I will say they were a little bit less soft talking about him this week than they have been in the past. Dan has been very protective of Hendon Hooker in the past. When they promoted Teddy Bridgewater, they were like, oh no, we like where Hendon's at. He's good. But then Brad comes out this week and it's like, if he wants to be the backup quarterback, he's going to have to earn it. I'm like, oh, okay. And it felt like a little bit of a challenge to him. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think that's calling your quarterback out. I don't think that's necessarily saying, hey, I don't believe in you. I think it's like, hey, everyone here has a job that they have to earn, and we're not giving it to anybody, and you're not exempt. Okay.
Yep.
See it on. Let's bring it on. Rise of Beast $5 super chat says, also, will one of you guys tell Carlos that Stafford is gone so he doesn't have to write smear articles about him anymore? Dear Lord, what are you referring to?
Oh no.
I don't know if this is referring into anything in particular because I've not seen anything. I did see. What did I see? I saw someone respond to a tweet of ours that's from a publication that is just writing fake articles and they're like an Onion type of thing.
Oh,
except
yeah.
It's not funny. In my opinion, sorry. And it was I think it was Jahmyr Gibbs pressured by Matthew Stafford to change his number. I'm like, what? This doesn't even make sense. What are you talking about?
Hey, give me 1 second. Keep talking in the chat, but I'll be
okay. Now I'm afraid to go to freep.com and see what has been written. Has there been something? Matthew Stafford. Oh my God. This can't be a real headline. Chat, I'm not going to click on this because I'm not going to give him the light of day here. But whatever you think this headline about Matthew Stafford is, you are going to be blown out of the water of what it actually is. And there's no way you can predict what you're about to see. It is the wildest thing I've seen written in a very long time. It was written April 4th, so literally today. I'm warning you, This is disturbing. Put the kids to bed. Here we go. Maybe this is an April Fool's joke. Maybe it is. I am not clicking on it. I am not going to find out. That is
Matthew Stafford confirms how Detroit Lions coddled him. Is that the one you're talking about?
Matthew Stafford's mediocre golf game confirms Detroit Lions coddled him. If someone wants to be the brave one to click that article, it's not going to be me. That has to be.
No one.
That has to be fake. That has to be an April Fool's joke, even though it says April 4th on it.
It does say April 4th. I see it.
He does have a point. He's never won a single Masters for the Lions. Good one, Liam. Oh, gosh. That can't. No. That can't be real. I'm in the wrong scene.
It's real. It's on the free press. I mean, I'm not clicking it, though. I'm actually closing the tab.
I think we have to hear him out. Nick the Greek 100-bit says, what's more likely, Manu becomes a starting caliber guard this year or Martin becomes a starting caliber nose tackle? You're just asking us to say something mean about both those players. I mean, neither of those things are going to happen, let's be honest. I mean, yeah. I guess I'd pick Manu because he's more of a question mark at this point because there's only 1 year and we haven't really seen anything, I'm having a real tough time finding any sort of path of Broderick Martin even making the team right now. It involves someone getting injured, and that's it. Like, that's the only way. Do you take a nose tackle 3 early in the season while Aleem McNeil is on PUP?
Yeah, that's the trick, right? Is I started wondering if they were, when they kept saying over and over that Lopez was a first and second down guy over and over and over. It made me wonder if they're planning on playing both of them.
DJ and
at the
Lopez.
Same time.
Maybe, yeah.
And if they are playing them both at the same time, then maybe you need Broderick.
Yeah, maybe.
You know,
if they have so many really defensive tackles right now.
I know, because they were also talking about using Pascal inside,
right?
And you know, Levi's going to bounce in and out, and yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Tomas. No, I do not have the same job as Carlos. Carlos is a columnist, which means he isn't there to write news. He's mostly there to write opinion articles, which means and he's a Detroit sports columnist, so he's not just covering the Lions. You may remember last year he wrote a very interesting article about Tarek Skubal after his first start of the season and what it meant for his Cy Young chances. And so I'm not here to disparage columnists, but it's not a job I would want because you're basically just throwing out opinions, and some choose to some are very good, right? We'll have very well informed opinions and things like that. Some will be a little hot takey, but I'll tell you this, Carlos is not in the building as much as I am, or as much as Dave is, or as much of any of the, day-to-day beat writers. He's there a fair amount, once or twice a week, while we're there 4 times a week. But I think that matters when it comes to Lions coverage, when it comes to whose opinion you should care about when it comes to individual sports. Care about the opinion of the people who are most informed. And I realize a lot of beat writers choose not to write a lot of opinion articles, right? Like, you won't see a guy like Justin Rogers write a lot of opinion articles. You don't see Dave Burkett write a bunch of opinion articles. It's because it's not their job. Their job is to report the news, to offer you all the information you need to inform your own opinion. But like as podcasts become a bigger thing, sometimes you do hear a guy like Justin, guys like the guys at MLive, the guys at the Detroit News, those guys offer a little bit more opinions, and those are the things you should be listening to more so, in my opinion, than some columnists. Like I said, there are good columnists out there. There are bad columnists out there. I'll let you judge who's who, but generally speaking, if you want to be informed, follow the beat writers, not the columnists.
Like, I really like John Neo. Like,
Neo's great.
He's fantastic. He's technically a columnist as well, but
yep,
he is
also just a really good dude.
Insanely smart on his angles that he takes.
I'm not going to throw out any names and things like that because one, it doesn't.
I will. I like John. John's
no,
great.
I'm sorry. But in terms of the other side of the spectrum, I'm not here to disparage anybody. There's very little benefit for me to do that.
Oh yeah.
And you guys know who you like and don't like. Am I caught up to date on alerts? I think I am. Oh no, Damian Smith, 2 pounds, says, would you have preferred Case Keenum to Kyle Allen?
I think Case Keenum's better, but I don't think he's anything. I don't think he would have. I mean, he might have pushed Hendon a bit more, but I don't think he would have passed him necessarily.
Yeah. Did he get like a vet minimum?
I don't know.
Oh, he's not even signed yet.
Great question. No, he just signed somewhere today.
Oh, okay. So the contract deeds aren't out yet.
Yeah.
I just looked on Over the Cap, which is why. Unless
was it announced
I'll be
with the
news? Okay.
Yes, one of the breaking guys.
But I mean, like, 1 year, $3 million. So
Yeah,
3 times, essentially 3 times the price.
That's more than I would have wanted to spend.
Right.
I'll be right back.
Okay. Oh, that's right. The Bears did. I did see that. The Bears did sign him. Wings up 4-2. Okay. Is there any hope for the Wings? I know they've been terrible, but like so is everyone else in the playoff race. I think I did, John, but I didn't read through them. I kind of scanned them. If you want to put them back in the chat, you can. But we're not changing the name. There's a lot going on, John. Chat's moving fast. The post route? Like post, as in like mail post? Post office? Post route? It's not bad. We're not changing the name. There's nothing wrong with the name. Just because you guys are twisting it. What was I forgot.
What day of the week is it? I forgot.
The reason we're keeping it the midweek mailbag.
Put expectations on it.
Yes, that's what we should be doing. We should be holding ourselves to a standard of trying to hit the middle of the week every week. That extra layer of pressure helps with consistency. Consistency helps with building an audience.
So why is this podcast the only one that has a midweek on it. Then is it me? Is it because you'd think that I need the consistency? Is that what it is? Am I finding this out on live with everyone else
I'm just saying.
that it's
I'm
that
just
it's
saying.
not that all of those things that you say, those
Ryan and Chris
consistency
show up every
points?
Sunday. That's just all I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm kidding. Mostly.
Sure. Sure. Remind me, what was happening on Wednesday that prevented us from doing this show?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
I would have done Wednesday morning if you wanted.
Sure. Sure.
Do you want me to pull up the Slack conversation of why we couldn't do it pretty much any other day and the list of things that you had going on in your life?
Yeah. Well, I schedule things for midweek, and then when you can't hit those markers, I have to. It's my fault. It goes to Friday.
Now it's my fault.
Well, it wasn't my fault this week. I can tell you that much.
All right. All right. It's 1 to 200. Are we ready to get back to the show? I think we are. Got to make sure I'm not scratching the wrong part of my arm now. I went in the shower today. I'm like, almost scrubbed that with a loofah. Then I didn't.
John Kaminsky was not under contract, so it does not impact the cap.
True. True. Do you think he'd be a Detroit Lion right now if he didn't retire?
He was not under contract.
No, what?
So,
But
no, I know. Oh, I am.
If
So
he was
am I.
healthy. If he was healthy.
If he was healthy, no.
All right. I think the answer might be yes, but who knows? All right. Let's get back to the actual show here. Let me make sure I have the questions lined up. And we'll answer some fan questions, some live fan questions at the end of the show as well. Okay. I'm ready. And we are back here on the Midweek Mailbag. 3 weeks left to go until the NFL draft, and so this second half of the Midweek Mailbag is going to primarily be focused on that. Let's get started here with Between the Numbers Anthony, who asks, what is the Lions' quote, dark horse position group to be selected in the first round? In other words, make the case for a sleeper position that could be the pick.
It's a tough question. I think based on what most everyone thinks is that it's going to be a player from the trenches, right?
Yeah.
Defensive tackle, defensive end, or interior offensive line.
Yeah. I think wide receiver might slip into that conversation too. Like, I think those are offensive line, defensive line, and wide receiver. I think the biggest expectations for that pick.
So I kind of mentioned earlier why I thought safety was probably not going to happen, but it could be because there's a couple talented guys there. And I'll go with safety only because the position I want to pick, I think, is too close to something else.
You just want to say Jihad Campbell, essentially. That's what you want to say.
No.
Oh.
I actually want to say offensive tackle.
Oh, okay.
But there's an asterisk on it because
Yeah.
I think the offensive tackle group all have guard capability.
Right.
And so I could see a offensive tackle being selected, competing inside for guard snaps as a rookie, and then potentially being prepared to kick outside if they do make a decision on Taylor Decker, which is something that you have brought up a couple of times. And so So I don't know if saying tackle is cheating. If it is, I'll go with safety. But if not, I think tackle is the position that not a lot of people are talking about, but it would kind of, I think it might surprise people. And then they realize like just this tackle group has
Yeah.
range, positional range.
Right. So I guess I'll take linebacker then. The problem only being that there's essentially only one that would that would go in the first round, and it is Jihad Campbell. And I think I can work this into the conversation we were just having off air with our live audience, and that's the kind of undecided future of Alex Anzalone. Kind of have a tough decision on him next year when he becomes a free agent. Do you want to sign a 32-year-old linebacker, or do you want to kind of hand the reins to someone else? And if you draft Jihad Campbell this year, you can kind of teach him up at the same position this year. Maybe don't, give him partial roles here and there, give him a sub package here or there. Probably don't get a ton out of him this year, but then next year, Derek Barnes, your freshly extended linebacker who very much could play the will linebacker position to where Alex Anzalone, and then you throw Jihad Campbell out there at Sam. That's a pretty good lineup for a long time at the linebacker position, and that would make a lot of sense. That's another way to keep that position cheap, because you are about to pay probably Jack Campbell next year a lot of money. You just paid Derek Barnes a fair amount of money, not a ton of money for a linebacker position, and so at some point you're going to have to throw a rookie into that conversation, and I'm not, and it might have to be as soon as next year. So if the Lions want to get a year ahead of that, and Jihad Campbell is somehow still sitting there at 28 or maybe at 25, and they want to jump up and get him, it would not surprise me at all, and I think it would make some sense.
Yeah, there's not a lot of positions I would take off the board, right?
Yeah.
Like
hopefully running back.
quarterback, running back. And I'm actually leaning towards taking corner off because they have three.
Yeah.
Right? Like they don't have
long-term guys too, right?
Yes.
DJ, Karen, and Ennis are all three long-term guys that are going to be here for at least the next 2 seasons.
Right. Like at the edge right now, they have no one. No.
Yeah, signed beyond this year.
I mean, Aiden's coming, but
right.
At linebacker, they have, like you said, they have 2. At safety, they have 1, but we're expected to see 2. Like, they have quite a bit of guys signed next year at corner. So I think I'd be surprised by corner. I don't think running back, quarterback, obviously not special teams.
Tight end.
I'd be surprised just because they have both Laporta and Wright under contract again next year. So like.
If Colston Loveland is there at 28, is there any consideration?
I mean, yeah, then you can Belichick it up and run like your two tight end sets, right? But then you
can get out of Brock in a year probably, and I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of people, especially with the Trey McBride extension, be like, "Well, see you later, Sam Laporta. We ain't paying you $20 million a year." And I'm like, "Hold on a second." Yeah, Sam Laporta kind of kicks a whole bunch of ass, and they love playing tight ends. And I know they didn't pay T.J. Hawkinson, but that was a different time of where this franchise was at.
Like to give, I'm gonna look it up real fast to give a little perspective here on like tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna. Just bear with me for a second.
You're like 12 personnel and things like that, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah.
They're in 11 personnel, which is 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 receivers. Only 54% of the time. That's the bottom third of the league. The next position group that they're in most is 12, 1 running back, 2 tight ends. They're in that 33% of the time. So a third of the time they're putting 2 tight ends out on the field, a third of offensive plays.
Yeah.
Like that's a ton.
Yep.
So first of all, Loveland's not even going to get anywhere close to that.
I just wanted to throw it out there. Maybe the injury causes him to drop a little bit. You never know.
But yeah, I mean, like they use tight ends so much that I could see them being like, we're just going to lean into it then, I guess.
Yeah. All right, next question here comes from Jason Krolik. Asks, do you think the Lions have any remaining holes that really need to be filled within the first 100 picks of the draft?
Edge and
Needs
edge.
to. You think it has to?
I think you have to. Like, and this is just, I mean, again, you've got Aiden, Davenport, Pascal, Levi, Muhammad. Like,
Yeah.
you got those guys that can do. But like Levi's an inside outside. Muhammad's not a guy that you want getting.
Pascal's an inside outside guy. They said as much this week.
And Davenport you can't trust. So like edge is just screaming to me. And the fact that I just mentioned in the last question, no edges are signed beyond this season.
Yeah.
So I do think they have to take an edge player in the first 100 picks. I would love to see them take an interior offensive lineman or any offensive lineman.
Sure.
Just because
You said the same last year at this time.
100%.
Yeah.
That is my mindset. I want an offensive lineman on the year, every year.
Yep.
And they didn't get my early one last year, so I this is the year I felt like you got to get it. But the difference between want and need is big, and you need an edge guy. You want an offensive lineman. So if you can come away with each of those positions and then fill in the blank on what your other one is, great. I'm game.
I think I'm there with you. I would also add to the strong want category a wide receiver. Doesn't have to be a wide receiver X at this point because some of the comments surrounding J-Mo this week have certainly raised eyebrows and makes you wonder if he's going to get an extension. So maybe you want to get ahead of that as well. But I think that's kind of it.
Yeah, we should. I will say I agree with you completely, but I also think you're not drafting a slot guy. Right. You're not drafting like a guy who's primarily playing in the slot. You're drafting a guy
unless that's late. Like that goes on the table in the 5th and 6th, 7th round if you're looking for maybe like a punt returner of the future or kick returner of the future.
I get that. Like and like you had an interesting guy in that in Isaiah Williams last year, right? Like if you're trying to acquire that, you get it. And he made the team, right? Like because of it, because he was playing well. And so, but if you're investing in a higher pick that you're expecting to stick, it's going to be an outside guy. Because all of your other highly developed talent work out of the slot. And so you can't add another one. Like Ibuka from Ohio State. Like he's awesome, right? He plays, but 75% of his targets come out of the slot. Like, how do you get that on the field? Like, how do you get him on the field when he's mostly working out of the slot? St. Brown is 50-50 in the slot, and you're only putting a slot receiver out there 55% of the time. Right. And so, like, how do you get him out there? So I don't know. I think there's some really good players. Now, if you tell me he can play the Z and you're confident in that, well, then I'm listening. But for me, I think he's a guy who's super talented. Will do good in the NFL. Probably not a fit for the Lions, but there's a lot of other guys that play on the outside that would be a fit receiver.
Sticking with the number 28 pick and what might happen there, our good friend Dan Pask asks, which team or teams picking earlier in the 20s might pick our guy? Is AG's pick worth it to you to use and jump like we did for Terrion Arnold to get a trench guy in this draft? And who would you do it for? Sorry, so many parts of this. Thanks, guys. So essentially, if there's a guy sitting there, let's say 22, which is Chargers pick, 23 is Packers, 24 is the Vikings. So in that range, are there any of those teams that are aligned with what the Lions like to do with the offensive or defensive line that would be worth using that compensatory 3rd round pick to jump 5-6 spots?
Well, Houston could target offensive line because they are a disaster.
Sure.
Right. So like you might be saying, I want to get ahead of Houston if you have a guy. I haven't really dug into the need, so this is just off the top of my head, right?
Yeah.
everybody can always use edge guys. That's the
Right.
thing. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like the Chargers, they just brought back uh Khalil Mack,
Hmm.
but didn't they just got rid of Bosa, right? No, no,
Right.
that was San Fran that got rid of Bosa. Or no,
No,
was
no,
it the
no, no.
Chargers one?
Chargers.
Okay, yeah.
Chargers. They cut
So
Joey Bosa. He
So
signed with the
Chargers,
Bills.
yeah, but I don't know if the Chargers have signed an edge, so like maybe they're interested. I don't know if the Packers or the Minnesota would be. I mean, like, but some of these teams, like the Rams are just gonna take the best guy. Like,
Right.
so it doesn't matter what their need is. Um,
The Ravens definitely need an edge. They're right before the lines at 28 or 27.
yeah, and they stylistically, um, like similar edge type players.
Right. The the depth of the edge is kind of like a double-edged sword there, because like on one hand you can just probably sit on your hands and get a guy that you'll like, but also every other team feels the same way, and they might just sit on their hands and pick the guy right that you might like best right before you. And so it's very tricky to play that game. It's why it's one of the most underrated parts, and you talk about this all the time, of Brad Holmes and his skills on draft days. He seems to very much understand when to be patient and understand maybe when he needs to be more aggressive, and just overall have a good feeling of what players are going to go where. And I don't think there's any better example of that than Amon-Ra, getting him in the 4th round. Now, obviously, I think he turned out better than even the lines would have expected, but just to know that they don't have to force the wide receiver pick in the first 3 rounds of that first draft, because he essentially knew Amon-Ra was going to be available on day 3, which is kind of incredible foresight.
Right.
It's just a matter of, can he do that in this draft? And it requires a lot of scouting beyond your team, right? Scouting needs
Yeah.
from other teams, scouting what kind of defenses they play in, what kind of offensive players they play in, what sort of like, statistical benchmarks they have for players. So like, maybe the Packers refuse to draft a defensive tackle that is under 300 pounds, right? Knowing that is so valuable in terms of maneuvering on draft day, that I don't have that sort of information. I don't have the bandwidth to even look at that information. It's why college scouting departments are 10,
Well,
15 players long, people long.
This is why you have a pro scouting department,
right. That too. Yes.
This
Yep.
yeah, this so while the college scouting department is diligently working on guys that fit you, your pro scouting department right now
Yeah.
is looking at the other teams in the around the NFL, and they know the schemes that they run, they know the types of players that they like, and they know the roster moves that they have made, and right now they are building up the boards for the other teams and saying, this is what we think these teams need. This is the types of players that we think they might like. And that is all part of what makes Brad, all information that comes to Brad that helps him make decisions on, do I need to get ahead of Baltimore?
Right. All right. I got 2 more questions and then we'll get out of here. From Elliot Battle asks, you said the key to being able to afford all of the extensions is hitting on the draft. Our 2024 draft was it was the first Lions that didn't have any early picks. In your opinion, in the 2024 draft the 2024 draft is a success if fill in the blank number of picks are starting or key contributors in 2026. So next year, how many of the 2024 draft class needs to be either starters or key contributors to kind of balance the budget?
Would they have 6 picks last year, right?
Sounds right. You want to go through them real quick?
No,
6.
yeah.
Terrion,
So-
Ennis, Giovanni Manu, Sione Vaki, Makai Wingo, Christian Mahogany. I think you need at least 4.
Okay. The general rule of thumb is the 3-3-3 system. Okay. I've spoken about this before.
Yep.
In every draft, you're ideally looking to come out of it with 3 starters, 3 people who are playing who are role playing like backups, and then 3 people who can push for special teams contributions.
Yeah.
And now this includes your UDFAs, right? And so ideally, you're coming out of a class with those 9 players. Now, when you get depth like the Lions have, those 3 starting roles don't necessarily have to be like starters like in
Right.
year one, and ideally they shouldn't be,
Right.
but they should be guys that develop into starters under their rookie contract, right?
Right.
All right. So Terrion's obviously a starter. I think Mahogany becomes a starter. That's 2. Will Rakestraw be a starter before his rookie contract is up? I think he has a real good chance.
Yep.
The other 3, Manu, Vaki, Wingo. I don't know how I call. Like, I think Wingo and Vaki are both in that role player category, right? And Manu is in the question mark. Like Manu, I don't even know if you can include Manu in any of those
Right.
3, right? But like then you've got guys like Strickland and Norris who are special teamers, right? They're guys that you've brought in as in you're developing. Iguakin, you're trying to develop up, and so I don't know like where you is Ennis that third starter? Like, can he be that? Like, is he the guy? Is he going to win a role? I think he has that potential.
Yeah.
And if they walk out with Arnold, Ennis, and Mahogany as their starters, and I think they're okay. I think they'll
Yeah.
be all right. So
Yeah.
I think you can still consider it a very viable class.
Right. And so I circled the number 4 because I think, like you said, you circle right off the bat 3 guys that can be starters, right? In Terrion, potentially Ennis, and Mahogany,
Christian
right?
Mahogany. Yep.
You consider already that Makai Wingo has shown enough flashes to be a rotational guy. I don't know if you consider that, quote, key contributor or not.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
But, like, you're almost already at 4 there, and then you kind of flip the coin with Giovanni Manu that could push it to 5 already. And then Sione Vaki, like, let's not poo-poo on him either. Is he ever going to have a significant offensive role? I don't know. At this point, I think it's just a numbers game. He's kind of in a crowded room, so maybe not. But he's going to be a key special teamer for probably a very long time. Is that like a quote-unquote key contributor? For a special teams hater like me, I can even admit that's important, right? So I think as much as like I have questions about how they approached that draft class, I would still say it's looking more promising than not. If they can get 3 starters out of that, potentially even a 4th, that is more than enough to kind of keep this spreadsheet balanced, I would say.
Mm-hmm. You got to hit this year, though. And you've got to, especially with the contracts that you have coming up. And so this is a massive draft for their future. And that's why I keep looking at who's under contract for 2026 when I'm looking at this draft class, because you're going to have a contributor or 2 from this draft class that is starting again as under their when they're rookies.
Yeah.
And so you can do it. You can find those guys and then coach them up into starters, but you have to be really selective in the positions that you decide to address when. For example, if you're going to extend Kirby and you're going to extend Branch, does it make sense to draft a safety in the 3rd round who's never going to start while they're a rookie? It's hard to justify that. At the same time, I like these safeties that I think could be really good, and you might have to pay a 3rd rounder to get them. Well, if you're going to do that and they're just going to be, role players, you're hoping a dice roll and you get another Mahogany,
right.
On day 3. And how often does that happen? Right. It doesn't, I mean, it's happens more often with Brad than you'd think. Cause you got St. Brown, you got Derek Barnes. Right. So, but if you are going to dice roll, and take a position that maybe you don't need uh, in like day two.
Right.
You it just makes it even more pressing that you hit on those day three guys. And it's a hard job, but man, he's done it so many times. It's hard to bet against him.
Sounds to me like you're an advocate of trading down because they need so many contributors from this draft class that you might as well just get as many shots as you can. Bites at the apple.
The key is, I don't think that many would make the roster. I don't know if all 7 of these guys would make the roster.
No, not necessarily, but like if you load up on day 3 picks, which I'm not advocating for, Brad Holmes, please don't do that. But the idea is like let's throw as many darts to see if we can get a Christian Mahagi, to see if we can get any of these, even a Malcolm Rodriguez.
I'm almost wondering if he plays it the other way and says, I know if I get a couple guys, maybe I start trading away for next year and I start acquiring picks next year, so that I have more draft capital next year. Yeah. And that gives me more bites at the apple for that class.
Yeah.
And because this group's so loaded, I may only have 5 guys that'll make the roster.
Right.
So maybe I focus on those 5 and trade into the future. And
right, and considering every pick in 2026 is going to be at the end of the round, it's going to be 32.
Yeah, you're going to need the capital to move up.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, last question here comes from Thomas Stevo at Lions UK NFL. Asks, given the draft capital Holmes spent, what is the quote-unquote breaking even on Broderick Martin and Giovanni Manu? Would long-term nose tackle 2 and offensive tackle 3 be enough return on investment, or do both need to be starters?
No, look, both of these guys were, Manu was the 4th pick in his class. No, he was 3rd. He was the 3rd pick in that class, wasn't he? But Broderick was the 6th pick in that class. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't expect them to walk out of that class with like 6 starters. You know what I mean? Or even 5 starters. The fact that they got 4 in that class right off the jump is insane. Like, it just doesn't happen. So, I don't know. In reality, you'd want him to be a rotational contributor if he's a day 2 pick. Right? You want him to be like Pascal. Yep. Pascal doesn't have to be a starter, but he can be a rotational guy that gives you a lot of snaps in a draft class where you've already acquired other starters. For Manu, it's, even though you drafted him in the 4th round, you used a 3rd rounder to acquire him. So technically, could you count him as like a day 3 or day 2 guy, right? And if that's the case, you're hoping he turns into a better version of Dan Skipper who can spot start and maybe even start for you down the road. That would be ideal, right?
Yeah.
It's tough to, like, I get the question.
Right.
I get the concept, and I get the simplicity of trying to, what breaking even, what he's trying to say here. It's hard to pinpoint exactly, I think.
Right. It's just hard to quantify, right?
Yeah, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Hard to quantify.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if it's that helpful to think about it in such black and white terms, right? Like, you're just going to get what you get out of it. If he's if let's say Broderick Martin becomes the backup nose tackle and stays on the team throughout the entirety of his deal, and maybe even gets a 1 or 2 year attached to it, he signs a 1-2 year extension, I'd say that's a decent amount, I guess. Like, you can't hate that necessarily. Does it live up to what you wanted out of a 3rd round pick? Does that live up to what you were hoping for? I mean, probably not. I don't think there's much of a chance that Broderick does grow into the guy that you were maybe hoping he was, but that doesn't mean you can't get value out of that pick still, right? And then with Gio, I mean, it's hard to say, right? Like, because his ceiling is so high, his floor is also still probably so low. That I think the reason you just take the swing on that is because you know that the payoff could be very high for a third round pick. To get a long-term left tackle, it's worth the risk for them to potentially have that. And I understand, like, by the time Giovanni Manu is your established left tackle, you're only going to get him on a cost control rookie deal for 2 seasons at best. But they still, like, it's less so the cost controlled aspect of it as it is getting him with a third round pick. You didn't spend a lot of draft asset to get that guy. And so even if he doesn't become that guy, it was a calculated risk that the Lions made. And so to say, like, oh, he's only an offensive tackle 3, that was a waste of a pick, I don't think that's right. I think that's, hey, you're getting some value out of that pick, but it was also worth the chance that he could have been this guy. If that makes sense.
It's so hard to speculate since it's been so long since we've seen him.
Right.
Like, we're making a lot of our assessments, or at least I'm making a lot of my assessments based on when I last saw him.
Right.
And that was 9 months ago. So
that's all you can do.
Right. And would I like for him to be the next Mailata? You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I think that's the idea, right? Like, that's what they're hoping for too. But I gotta see him. He's might be one of the most things I'm looking forward. Like, watching how he plays might be one of the things I'm looking forward to the most this training camp.
Yeah, I think there's always those, like, second and third year guys that are most fascinating to watch in training camp. Like, obviously we get excited about the rookies and UDFAs and free agent additions, things like that. But it was like last year with Hendon Hooker, where it was just like, I had no idea what Hendon Hooker was going to look like. And I was really excited about Hendon Hooker in training camp, even though I know if all things fall into place, he's not going to play it down for the Lions. It's still really fascinating to watch those second and third year guys take jumps, because we've seen some guys in this regime take massive year 2 and year 3 jumps. And Manu's going to be a candidate to do that. But at this point, he's just a candidate to do that. We don't know. And that's part of the excitement of the offseason, which we will continue to cover here for the next, 4 months until training camp here. But that'll do it for this week's quote-unquote midweek mailbag. Hopefully we'll be closer to the middle of the week next week as we inch closer to the NFL draft. As always, we'll have our main POD cast recording on Sunday night. It should be on your feeds Monday morning. We're going to talk about the NFL owners meeting, some of the biggest takeaways from that. We'll talk linebackers and safeties and corners in this year's draft class and the guys we like on day 1, day 2, and day 3. And yeah, we'll get First Bite going again for Pride of Detroit Direct subscribers, talking about the Lions free agency class. Go to pridedetroit.com/subscribe if you want access to that. But until then, we'll close things out here. That's Erik. As always, I'm Jeremy. It's chaos. Be kind.
Recording stopped.
All right. We'll hang around for a little bit here. I know Chris said he needs the audio by 11 p.m. So we got an hour and a half, which we're not. It also has to download on my computer, which takes longer than you'd think. So, willing to hang out here for a little bit, answer some of your questions maybe for the next 15, 20 minutes. Then we're going to get out of here. But appreciate all the questions.
Said I'm looking for my something. I can't find it here.
I don't think I have any alerts. Nope. Up to date on alerts.
There it is. You know something I've noticed with your Hendon Hooker stories that you've had to write over and over recently is that your impression of Hendon has gotten steadily, just slightly, a little bit worse in each article. In each article, it's like it gets a little bit worse than what we remember.
Well, I mean, it's
It's
just
like, hey, Hendon had a shot. Hey, Hendon was he was all right. He wasn't great. Hey, he was a little inconsistent.
oh,
Hey,
you're
he
talking
had an
about
up and down.
camp observations.
No, I'm
Oh.
talking about like the articles you've had to write when you're reflecting back on how he did in
Oh,
camp. They get like it gets like progressively a little bit worse and a little bit worse.
interesting.
It's not drastic, but it's just subtle. Pretty soon you're gonna want him traded off.
No,
Yeah,
I mean,
all you gotta do, the way you get to that point, you have to write 50 Hendon Hooker articles, and then you'll get to the point where you just want him traded. And then that'll
I will say, like my main recollection of training camp was that he was not very good. There were flashes of improvement.
that's harsher than what you last wrote. So
Is it?
you're continuing the trend.
Like he got better, but I don't think he was ever like I'm comfortable with him as my backup quarterback.
Yeah. I like him
Um,
as a backup.
do you think he was playing as a better than average backup by the end of training camp?
I don't not better than average, but at the same time, I don't think there's 32 starting caliber quarterbacks in
No,
the NFL.
but I'm asking as a if you line up all of the backup quarterbacks, was Hendon 16th among that group by the end of training camp?
I'd have to think about it. Probably here's the way I view NFL quarterbacks. About 20 of them, and then there's about 80 of them
Right.
that are good backups.
Yeah.
That are backups,
Right.
right? And that's your 100 NFL quarterbacks. But and it's not it's
Right.
not really it's not really 80. It's probably closer to like 40.
Right.
But there's just it's a hard position to find a guy.
Sure. And I mean, last year was his rookie season, essentially. So
Yeah.
I'm willing to accept that there's probably a lot of growth to be had, and that will happen this offseason. So he's again, like to me, I'm going into this offseason with the same kind of excitement to see like, okay, where is he at now? Let me see. Because he's putting in the work. Like I don't think there's any questions about the personality. I don't think there's any question about the maturity, the work ethic, all that stuff. It's there. That I think that was one of the main reasons they drafted him, right? Like Brett Holmes kept talking about how good of a leader he was at Tennessee. So
I've told you this before, but when my children are not watching television, they default the TV to NFL Network, right? They just, if their show goes off, they put NFL Network on and then like walk away or whatever, right? So there's always some show on. It feels like anyway. And so I was working by one of my daughters, and she got done, put NFL Network, and then opened up her tablet. NFL Network was on, and it was the historical things that they do, where they take a player and they talk about like what it was like for them over their career.
Yeah.
And they were doing Carson Palmer. Okay. Number 1 overall pick from Cincinnati, right? And they showed him coming into the league as a rookie, as the number 1 pick. And he talked about how hard it was transitioning. And he was like, are you reading? He was talking to the backups, and he was like, are you reading the player or are you reading the zones? And they're like, well, I'm reading both. And he's like, because I would just read like the zone, and I would just look at my guy and I would just go based on feel. And he's like, yeah, no, you can't do that. And he's like, because Brady does this. And like, and it was just fascinating how even this guy who was the number 1 pick, Heisman Trophy winner,
was still seeing the game at such a basic level.
Exactly. That's where I'm going with this, right? So for when you look at these like rookie quarterbacks or guys that are like, still developing, it has to be just like these massive hills for
Right.
these guys to climb.
Yep.
And that's why when some of these backup quarterbacks can kind of get to the pinnacle, even if their talent caps them, that they stick around
Right.
because they've actually gotten to the point where they can understand how to read defenses.
Right. That's the thing. They're
right?
usually the cerebral kind that stick around.
Right. And but that's also why there's not a lot of highly talented quarterbacks.
Right.
Because you have to get that cerebral part down before, and if you can get both, you're
a starter.
Congratulations, you're one of 20 people in the
Yes,
world.
exactly.
Right? If you can do both, you're there. You're 20 people.
Yep.
And if you can't, but you're good at one or the other,
Right.
then you're one of the other. You're one of the 80.
And in general,
so-
teams prefer the mentally sound ones.
100%.
Because they're the ones that you can throw in the game and they're not going to turn the ball over, right?
Right.
Which is kind of like the main criteria of a backup quarterback is don't turn the ball over, for Christ's sake.
It's why they brought Teddy back.
Yeah.
Right? For the playoffs.
Yep.
Because they knew he wasn't gonna mess up.
Yep.
Like what he turned around and handed the ball off, right? And J-Mo did the thing.
Yeah. Touchdown winning drive. Or not.
Yeah.
Touchdown
drive.
No winning.
Don't rewrite history here.
By the way, one of these things that I'm loving from doing these primetime midweek mailbags is that we're just getting sports updates from our chat. Like, now I know that Ovechkin tied Gretzky in goals. The Pistons are up 16 at the half. The last I checked, the Wings were up 2 goals. This is great. Keep that coming. You're like a ticker for me. Really quick, Tactile Puma asks, how did It's Chaos become your don't forget to spay and neuter your pets? It comes from Patton Oswalt's, I think it's called Annihilation stand-up special, where he talks about losing his wife. And I believe that was her saying that she lived by. And I don't think she created it either. I think it's passed on. But anyways, it's I don't know. It's just something that resonated with me a lot. And so I stole it.
She was a writer. Do you know much about her?
A little bit, yeah. She had written about an actual serial killer.
The Night Stalker. California-based serial killer that went undiscovered for like decades, and she
helped them solve a cold case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
she did a podcast on it. She wrote articles on it.
Yeah.
Fascinating woman. HBO has a whole documentary series on her.
I always forget whether one of his wives is Meredith Singer. I can't remember if that's the old one or the new one. Because I don't know celebrities.
No, his wife who passed away was not. She
Salinger,
was just.
Is that right? Oh, Salinger, Meredith Salinger. I got her name wrong. That is current wife. Old wife is Michelle McNamara.
Yes, McNamara.
Golden State Killer.
Interesting. Oh, that's what it was. Geez, sorry, I got it mixed up.
You're kind of a
apologies.
You're kind of a true crime guy a little bit, right?
I do enjoy them. I do. I like. Speaking of the podcast we were talking about, there is actually a podcast series about the history of crime in Detroit as well.
Oh, really?
I've listened to. Fascinating.
If
you're interested in Detroit and interested in the history of Detroit, they go back and they talk about how crime occurred and then how it affected the political world. And they talk about how like what it was like during the 80s and how that impacted the city and how it got into politics. And then it goes like it goes into like Kwame, and like the person who did the podcast like interviewed him and like and so it's very interesting.
Me and a couple of my buddies, and I hope they won't mind that I'm going to say what our idea was, because I don't think we're ever going to pursue it at this point. But we were thinking about doing like a true crime kind of podcast that were just about unsolved mysteries in Michigan, like less maybe true crime and more like urban legends and things like that. And we were the name wasn't the best, and I know you guys think I named podcast terribly, but it was unsolved mysteries. But anyways, if anyone wants to pick up that mantle, I'll allow it. Don't boo me, I'm right.
The podcast I was talking about, if anyone's interested, it's called Crime Town. And I believe
not S-Town. That's something different.
No. Crime Town.
Do you listen to S-Town?
Season 2 is Detroit, by the way.
Got it.
What is S-Town?
It was kind of the successor to Serial in a way. It wasn't about the same thing, but it was I think it was made by the same people. I listened to it, but I don't remember that much about it.
The Serial podcast is kind of like it's kind of like when you are late to watching a sitcom or like a series, and you're like, everyone's talking about how great it is, and you're like, oh, cool, and you're like, oh, you're in season 5, so that's like 500 hours worth of stuff that I have to watch, or or 50 hours, I guess 500. It's like 50 hours worth of television I have to watch to catch up to where you are. Yeah, I'll just know what happened.
Well, I'll never watch an anime ever. There's just a bajillion episodes. Sorry, Miko, if you're watching. Yeah. I think there's not a lot of questions coming in. Actually, Gasman asked your thought on Nick Scourton. Ooh, starts with a big sigh.
Well, he's a complicated guy to me because I don't understand why he's not higher rated. And it could just be me looking through my Lions eyes. Mm-hmm. And I look at him and I'm like, oh, he's a fit. And so like I look at how the board could fall and I'm like, would they consider him at 28 because he's not going to be there at 60? And I'm like, yeah, maybe they consider him. And then I'm like, well, could he fall to 60? Because like not, he's rated low on some boards, and I don't know. I think he's going to be a better fit for Detroit than he is for a lot of other teams. Mm-hmm. And so therefore he's going to be lower on like a lot of general boards than he would be than necessarily on the Lions. So I think he's kind of, again, I don't think he's in that elite tier.
Yeah.
Right. We've talked about this. There's like 15 or so elite like players in this draft. And so I think he's in the next tier. The question is he, if player 28 and player 50 have the same grade, then you might pick him at 28 even if he's ranked 50. You know what I mean? But I mean, he's not going to be ranked 50 on a Lions board. On a Lions board, he's going to be higher. But I don't know. He played at 280 and then cut weight so that she could show he could be lighter and more. Right. 15 players in general. DJ Ron. I'm just saying 15 elite players in the whole draft. So I like him. I like what he did at Purdue when he was asked to attack a little bit more. He has that kind of Aiden spin move, which would be kind of funny to watch them both depending off each edge. But I think he's a guy who's going to be in consideration for the Lions in the first. I also don't think he'll be there at 60. At the same time, I don't know if I'd be surprised if he was there at 60 because there's so many people that are like, oh, he's got flaws and he's got this. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I see it the way that they do. I think he has the upside to be Trey Hendrickson. Like that's what he could develop into. He could be that level of a guy.
Yep.
But he's not there. He's not there now, but I think he could turn into that. And that's why I think they'd consider him in the first.
Luckily, the Lions have the second best defensive line coach in the NFL.
That's what I hear. The other one's a coordinator, so I guess he's technically number one.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, and I feel like you have to treat Scouton you've kind of had this outlook on looking at the draft this year where you're like, I'm not going to limit myself to players that I'm going to look at to people that I view 25 or later because the Lions could move up. They've shown they've been willing to move up. They're going to go and get their guys. And if Nick Scouton is one of their guys, even if they think it's too rich for 28 and they're sitting there at 60 and they're getting impatient, they could trade up to 45. They could trade up to 50 and get him if he's still out there. Or they could trade back. If like you said, everyone from 28 to 50 is on a very even level to them, they're probably going to try to trade back.
Yeah, especially if someone's trying to get up and get a quarterback, or if someone's trying to get up. I got a weird feeling about the receivers in this class. Like there's 4 receivers that kind of everybody thinks are going to go in the top in the first round.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of thinks. I think a couple could slide.
What do you make of the Ted McMillan stuff?
It's interesting. It's interesting to me because I'll tell you why. I watched Steve Smith break him down, and Steve Smith kind of talks about, oh, look, that's a great play, isn't it? Here's what he did wrong. And I'm like, yes, I agree. He did do that wrong. And like a lot of his highlight plays are him not running the right route and then just out athleting the corner. And I'm like, that is very interesting to me. And Steve was saying things like, you can't do that in the NFL. You do that in the NFL, you're going to get punched in the jaw, and then you're not going to get separation. You're not going to be in a spot to be able to make that play if you run your route like that. And so it's hard to watch Steve Smith sometimes break stuff down because he just rambles and he's all over the place.
Sure.
But he's very smart.
Right.
He understands the game. It's like when the combine was on and Dion would break down corners and safeties.
Yep.
Like Dion knew in a heartbeat where a player belonged. You know what I mean? Like he would just be like, "Yep, that guy don't flip his hips, he's a safety." And then 2 years later, that guy's playing safety. Like Dion, you could hate him for his arrogance, you could love him for his bravado. That dude knows football.
He knows ball.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievably smart. So the Tet stuff's interesting to me because
and you've seen the thing that everyone's mad about.
Oh, that he said he did like the game film, and I don't watch game film. That's okay. Again, I'm going to take this from Steve Smith.
Okay.
Steve Smith said a lot of people are saying, "Oh, he's a Cali boy. He's too relaxed," and he's not a Cali boy. Steve Smith called him an island boy, and he's right. He's right. It's not like a laissez-faire, like, oh, cool, bro, let's go with this. It's more of a laid back, matter of fact, but like it's a different kind of way of looking at things. And so for him to be like, yeah, just nonchalant stuff, like that's kind of his demeanor Like if he's
When he's
an
talking.
Islander, like Steve,
Not when
but
he's
yeah,
working. Like his work
Right.
his interpersonal demeanor is different than his work demeanor.
right. And so again, if that's how he is, like I've only seen small clips, so I
And to
can't
be
speak on that.
also
But that's what Steve Smith said. Yeah.
to be clear, this was 2 years ago. It's to me, it's very weird to me that this is resurfacing right around the draft. Like some alarm bells go off for me when this. I don't know. What is he like 16, 17 years old at the time?
Yeah, like I'm not getting too worked up over it because again, some guys are just they're just laid back. You know what I mean? Like it's not a bad thing to be laid back. So I do have some concerns about his game that I didn't have initially after listening to Steve Smith point some stuff out. And so I don't think he's as clean to me as I thought.
Yeah.
And then Golden ran like the wind, but he's a little undersized. And Burden is more this gadget guy who's, he ran good, but like his stock isn't as good as it seems to be slipping. And I think Missouri didn't do him any favors in how they deployed him. Like they ran him a lot of bubbles and like DJ Moore stuff instead of like running him deeper. So I'm going to say this. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see all four of those guys still on the board in the back half of the first round.
Okay.
In the back half of the first round.
Okay.
And if that happens,
that'd be bad. Well, it'd be mixed.
Yeah.
Like it'd be bad because that probably means a lot of defensive players are coming off the board. It wouldn't be like last year where everyone was falling. But like you said, maybe that becomes a trade down opportunity for one of these wide receiver hungry teams at the top of the second round.
Because there's a clear separation between the top four and the next four.
Right.
Because the next four are contributors, but they have more flaws and they need more polish. You have four guys that are ready to go right out of the box, starters, and can be relied upon as like wide receiver 1 or 2. Right. Everybody else is going to need some polish, but there's talent. But I'm getting weird vibes.
You heard it here first. Shenanigans at the wide receiver position on draft day. Expect it. Texas Wolverine, they give it their 34 months subscribed on Twitch using that Twitch Prime. No decaf. 49 months subscribed to channel 8 in a row. Says the Vikings should have been embarrassed at home as the number 2 seed. I'm sorry, quoting Dan Chad Campbell. That is a reference to, I want to say our friend Draw Play Dave, but I don't know him personally. I've never had any interactions with him, but Chris shared a pretty great cartoon of his regarding oops, that's the wrong button. Regarding the rule proposal of the playoff seeding changing. I'm not going to read this out loud, but hopefully you guys have a big enough screen where you can read this. I'll also just throw it in the chat. It's a Blue Sky link, so sorry if that's triggering to you. But anyways, it's pretty funny. What I haven't written this story yet, and maybe I will, maybe I won't, because generally speaking, rule change stories did not do particularly well, even though I love all that part. What I found interesting, and I don't know if everyone watched the Rod Wood media session or not, it was interesting to hear how their proposal came to be. Because when you think of a team coming up with a rule proposal, it's just like, oh, we're thinking about this and we're going to propose it. That's not how it happened at all. So it started with Amon-Ra St. Brown doing a media session, I think leading up to the Minnesota game, where he's like, I don't understand how the team that loses this game is going to go from 1 seed to 5 seed. That doesn't make sense to me. Then Troy Vincent, who I think is like the VP of officials or like somewhere high up on the NFL chain.
Yeah.
He calls the Lions. He calls Rod Wood and says, "Hey, I just saw Amon-Ra say this, and I agree. Do you guys want to go halvesies in on a rule proposal this year? Like, we agree with this. Do you want to write up a rule proposal for us, essentially? The Lions." And I'm just like, shouldn't it work the other way around? Like, shouldn't you be telling the competition committee what they should be writing for the rule book? But instead, the NFL went to the Lions and be like, "Hey, one of your players feels this way. We kind of agree. Do you want to essentially, like, I want to say co-sponsor, but it was just submitted by the Lions. It didn't say the Lions and the competition committee." And now the Lions get called cowards because they're doing the NFL's bidding.
Troy Vincent is the executive vice president of football operations for the NFL.
He's beyond officiating at this point.
Yeah, he is risen.
He is risen. It's not Easter
up
yet,
the ranks.
Erik.
Sorry, he's risen up the ranks. I'll complete that sentence. But I wonder if Rod Wood spoke out of turn there. Like, I wonder if he was supposed to let that cat out of the bag.
Maybe.
Because my guess is he probably wasn't.
But we were talking about it a little in the Slack, and we're like, how often does this happen? Because I bet it's a lot. I bet this isn't the first time that's happened, right?
I'm sure it's not, but it's probably the first time we've heard of it because Rod Wood spoke out of school.
Yeah. We'll see. I'm curious if I don't think that one is going to pass in May, but they tabled it. They didn't turn it down. My kind of sense was there eventually there will be some sort of amendment to that rule, and the one that they were talking about pretty openly was, okay, if you're under 500, then you won't get your home playoff game, but other than that, division winners still will. 20 bits from RGA who says, Broderick Martin this year, he is risen. Erik Schlitt.
There you
go. I'll send you as soon as I'm out. Chris, thanks for stopping by, buddy. Nick the 100-bit says, has anyone heard from Kyle Meinke? Is it true that he lost his marbles while doing ayahuasca with Aaron Rodgers? Yeah. That's the reason why Aaron Rodgers hasn't picked a team. He's trying to decide if he wants to play in the NFL or just live up the bohemian lifestyle with Kyle Meinke in Germany. No, honestly, like, every now and then it comes up in the Lions media room, and it kind of seems like he's just kind of gone off the radar. Like, doesn't really keep up with anybody in that room, at least. I'm sure he keeps up with some people, but.
So his Twitter handle is still in my beat writer feed.
Yeah,
that I watch, and like, I didn't even realize it until he texted one thing in like the last like year.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh,
yeah, I think he said something.
I forgot Kyle
about Andy. Yeah, and since then like his other tweet is like, here's my announcement now that I'm leaving in October or whatever that was.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, kudos to him. I would get the hell off of the internet if I didn't have this job. I'd like to think I would. No offense to anybody, but
not me. I love the people.
Oh God. Such a liar.
I feel like we skipped some questions.
Yeah, I didn't get to everyone. Let's get to one more and then maybe get out of here, maybe by 10. To Mary, Hail Mary. She said, to win the division again, where do you think the offense and defense need to rank? Should we expect both to improve this season? I mean, hard to expect the offense to improve, right?
Yeah,
like
that's tough.
I think it's still reasonable to expect it to be a top 5 offense, and that's more than enough on that side of the ball.
I think you can still win if it's a top 8
offense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they're still in the top 8, they can get by with a middle of the road defense. If they end up with, if they end up being in the top 10 in both, then they're going to smash people like they did last year.
Honestly,
But
I think if you want to win the division, you're going to have to be top 10 in both.
I don't know. I it's kind of like, I think you could regress a little
Yeah.
in on offense. You got to be top half, and you got to be top half of the league in both for sure. And you got to be top 10 in at least offense. Do you remember how? I mean, it's hard to get in top 10 in both.
No
it
question.
Really is.
But they were for almost all of last season.
Right. No,
And
I
they
agree. And
barely
that's why they
squeaked by in the division the way it was.
Well, yeah. I looked at DVOA like every week, right? And it's like so often you don't see, like, the teams that you see that are at the top of their division are like top 8 in one side of the ball, and then like top 12, top 15 on the other side of the ball. And they can still be at the top of their divisions. The teams that were top 10 in both were usually like, just, like I said, like it was the Lions and then like maybe one other team.
The Ravens,
and then that team would drop out, and some Ravens, sometimes San Fran, sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get under 10 in across the board. And the Lions were that. That's why they were so good. They just, when you're able to put up those types of numbers that they did, it was pretty impressive.
Just trying to pull up the DVOA numbers from last year and see.
Well, I mean, eventually they regressed, right?
So there were 3 teams total that had top 10 offensive and defensive DVOA.
Okay.
Ravens.
Bills.
They were 1-6. Lions were 3-5. So they had top 5 in each.
Yes.
The third team might surprise you.
Is it the Bills or is it San Fran?
No, it is neither of those teams.
What?
All
right.
It is the team that I was concerned about a little bit in the playoffs, and you were very not concerned about in the playoffs.
Who, the Vikings?
Nope. Close.
Oh, the Rams?
Nope.
No. Who would it have been? Who was I not concerned about?
I was less concerned after the way they finished the season. It's the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
4th offense, 7th defense.
Yeah, they were good.
They were
down the stretch a lot.
They were really good December, and then like it tapered off a little bit in January, and then they, I don't even. Who did they lose to in the playoffs? I don't even remember.
Oh. San Fran.
That's
it.
They just that's usually
they
true.
Always, yes, that's who they always lose to.
Did they
Eagles?
they faced Eagles, I think, first, right?
Yeah, Eagles. Yeah.
And they played them close. No, they were
no.
Okay, now I'm remembering. They fumbled the opening kickoff of that game.
Yeah. It was over. Like and then isn't that the one where Saquon, like, the first drive Eagles had, he went like 80 yards.
Something like that.
He had like 80-yard touchdown, and it was like done.
Yeah.
Right?
The Packers, I think, hung around in that game, but like there was never any belief that I think they were going to win that game. It wasn't like the previous year where they... God, who did they almost beat?
San Fran.
Was it? That's right. It was San Fran. That's right.
Yeah.
They came close to beating San Fran and then didn't.
Yeah, because they ran the God, what's that play? The pin and pull. That the 49ers had no answer for that pin and pull, and they just ran it over and over and over again with Aaron Jones, and they were just gashing them. And then Jordan Love throws an interception, and they lose.
That's right.
And so, yeah.
Anyways, to the original point, there are a lot of teams that are close. Like Buffalo was 2nd and 11th. Philly was 13th on offense, 1st on defense. The Chargers were 12th and 9th.
Ooh, Jim Harbaugh effect, huh?
Chiefs were 8th and 12th.
That is surprising to me, by the way, that the Chargers were at that.
But I mean, the overall point here is like most of these good teams that are winning their division are close to top 12 in both.
Right.
Top 3rd.
I mean, like, yeah.
All right. I think we'll call it there. I kind of already gave the rundown of the rest of the week, or rest of the week, next week at this point, I guess. PODcast, 7 p.m. Sunday. We have confirmed that time with all 3 people. B from Detroit, are you the same person in Pride of Detroit Direct who keeps telling Erik to stop saying San Fran?
I've done that my whole life because that's what it was called.
Right.
That's what they called it back then. So that's why I grew up calling it.
Only people who've never visited California would say that. Have you visited California, Erik? I guess
Yeah,
you've been to San Fran. Never mind.
I've been to San Fran and L.A.
Are those the only 2 times?
No, I've been to L.A. with you, and then I went to L.A. to Hawaii and then back.
Like a layover, that doesn't count.
No, but I was there for a few days.
Oh, okay.
Like, yeah, I mean, I've been to LA and like, as like a destination to stay just a couple of times, but I've been through LA, I don't know, half a dozen times.
Yeah. Anyways, so main PODcast Sunday night, 7 p.m. Midweek mailbag Wednesday. I don't know. Did we talked about it? I don't remember. I don't think we've talked about it next week. It'll happen sometime next week.
We haven't talked yet.
And I'll try to get a First Bite guest for private Direct subscribers.
We can't do Wednesday during the day because there's testing at the middle school for 8th graders, and so my 7th grader doesn't go to school. They close down the school for 6th and 7th graders.
Got it.
And let the 8th graders test in peace.
Gotcha. I thought when you said testing, I'm like, are you saying we can't do midweek mailbag because of like a pro day? Are you insane?
No. Because one of my kids will be. I'll have one of my kids is what I'm saying because she's off of school. And maybe that night. Beast comes out that day, man.
That's already been announced, or are you just estimating?
No, it's coming out. It's announced.
I didn't see the announcement.
It's going to be. I'm going to be just reading that all day.
Has the Athletic done their like secret superstar thing yet? That's one of my favorite things they do with the draft.
No, not yet.
Has any of those guys ever hit? Because I don't think they have. But it's fun getting to know them.
I think they take such an obscure player that isn't, right?
Hey, the Pistons, the Red Wings, and the Tigers all won today. When's the last time that happened?
April in the D. I watched an episode of Detroiters yesterday.
Yeah.
That's
a good one. Is this your first go-around of Detroiters?
No.
Okay.
No.
I was about to be very excited for you.
No, it's my
The Beast
second.
is dropping next Wednesday.
Yeah, next Wednesday.
What day? The 8th? 9th?
9th. Yep, Wednesday the 9th. That is when I will be. That is the final piece to the grit index. We have about 80%
that'll only take a good collective 36 hours.
Well, we're hoping we can get it done.
I'm afraid of all the work you're putting into that for one post.
No. So here's the deal. I'm going to include the whole document, the whole tracking document, which will have it's got a stupid amount of information.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Anthony, who does a
Or
ton of research.
Yeah, between the numbers.
Between the numbers on Twitter. Yep. Um, he started to when he was making like he was doing his tallies, he started putting notes in our Excel cells. So he just would like take a quote, throw it in there, and he would as like kind of like a justification for the score.
Yeah.
And then I felt like I probably should be doing that too then. So now this thing is like littered with like notes on inside of each little cell that justifies what score we're getting. And so we've also weighted the different analysts so that it gives preference to guys who analyze more players, and so
Better track record.
we got a couple of things that we are trying to get done between now and Wednesday, so that when Wednesday comes, we can just like dive into that, and then we'll see how fast we can get the index out, because it's so okay. Where I was going with this is I'm going to take that attachment,
Yeah.
and I'm going to include it in my Patreon.
Yes, Eric. Yes, that was going to be my follow-up. I'm not saying you should charge for it, but also you should kind of charge for it.
We're gonna put it out. Yeah, there. It's going to be. It was in the past.
Yes.
In the past, I've just added like a couple of like pages onto my overall document that you can kind of go in and see the stuff. It's too big now. It's a whole document.
Living, breathing
So
document.
On POD in my draft board, it'll have the final scores, but I will have the behind the scenes stuff that we're going to put out there as well to show people the work that we did, so that it is like a living entity that people could like access if they wanted to.
Which, let me tell you all, is in reference, in case you don't know, Erik has a Patreon to support his podcast, the Detroit Lions Breakdown Podcast, which gets you a couple of cool perks throughout the year. But the coolest perk is probably, and I don't think you'll mind me saying this, come during draft season. Because the biggest perk of the year is, I'm going to show it again on screen, his draft board. This is the amount of tabs on this thing is already insane. If you can see at the bottom here, you have one for every position. That I don't even know if this is the most. This is the post combine one. Is that the most up to date one?
I have one now that has everything put. Yeah, that's the most up to date one on the. But so like if you click on like see the things to the right on the right, like all those where you get past where it says like all the light blue, and then there's like where it says yards per, all of that, even more to the right of that, that's all filled in on all the positions now too. So that's, you can see all the play, all that, those sections, those are all filled in for every thing.
So
and when I get the beast, I'll fill in the other missing pieces.
These are all his particular big board based on the lines, essentially.
I'll match it up more, and I'll be moving guys around even more as we get closer to.
So just a quick look at and I don't want to show everything because you should pay for it. It's what all of these are like: Daniel Jeremiah, Lance Zerloin, Dane Brugler, their rankings, and then kind of like yours is kind of amalgamation of all of them plus your own. This is all the measurables. Blue is obviously good. Red is obviously bad. You have NFL comparisons. You have what scheme they fit in best, college, where they've played, Senior Bowl, East-West Run game, things like that. For every position, not to mention He has the Lions depth chart here, the Lions needs in terms of the spots on the roster available, the 2024 cap and all the cap hits and how much they have estimated cap room, how much they could roll over, all that sort of stuff. All sorts of other stuff that he'll eventually fill out too. There's the grid index part that we were just talking about. Anyways,
I'll have a.
It's how much can you get this for? What does it require?
$5 a month.
$5 a month.
But you can do it just for a month too.
It could theoretically just cost you $5 for the month of April.
Yes.
Plus you'd get that grid index thing that he was talking about. So patreon.com/Detroit Lions breakdown. Highly, highly, highly recommend. Erik puts months and months and months of work into this. You know, I think all of you have come to appreciate what Erik does, but he turns it up to an entirely different notch when it comes to the NFL draft in ways that I'm completely incapable of. So it's worth your time. It's worth your effort, especially if you're a draft junkie. Even if you're not, like myself, it's an incredibly valuable thing on draft night to quickly familiarize. Like if you haven't done any research on this guy, the Lions pick someone you haven't heard of. Maybe you haven't had the drive to look into the draft because you're still hurting from last season. This is a way to almost instantly get to know a guy by just pulling up that sheet and saying, oh, Dane Brugler had him as the 15th best prospect. Oh, look at his RAS score. Look at his 40 time. Look at his bench. Look at all that stuff. It's there in an instant. And it's really cool.
Thanks.
So go buy it.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. RG 20 bits says, Erik, nobody does it like you. You put out your own beast. It's kind of true.
Well, look, once I get Dane's, I fill in the blanks, and then we're gonna knock the grid index out, and then we're gonna unleash those over the next few weeks. Because, like you said, we're less than 3 weeks from this shindig. I know, crazy.
That's why, yeah. I mean, literally on draft night, I have Dane's draft guide opened up. I have your sheet opened up, and maybe like one other draft guide, maybe like PFF or something, because they'll have PFF scores readily available. Like those are my 3 essential tabs on draft night. And it should be yours too. All right, we got to get out of here. Hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you at the very end of the weekend, 7 p.m. Sunday for the main POD cast. But until then, have a wonderful Saturday. Have a wonderful Sunday. Go Tigers, go Pistons, go Red Wings. April in the D, baby. We'll see you guys later.